I think we will reconvene our meeting here. First up, we will start with agenda item 3. This is a request to provide San Diego County incarcerated persons access to free telephone calls. This board letter has been brought forward by Supervisor Lawson-Remer. Let me ask Supervisor Lawson-Remer if she'd like to make some introductory comments on this item.
Before Supervisor Lawson-Remer begins, any members of the public that have requested to speak in this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair Fletcher. I first just want to acknowledge the hundreds and hundreds of comments that we have received in support of this item. The outflow has been overwhelming, and it's just really a privilege to be part of a community that understands how important it is that we take this action here today, because the pandemic has shown how important it is that people are able to communicate with the outside world when they are in isolation. Everyone should have the ability to contact their loved ones, but right now that is just not the case for everyone in our region. And this action today will begin to change that. In San Diego County, every incarcerated person detained must pay minute per minute to place phone calls. And the cost is exorbitantly high, could be more than thousands of dollars every single year. The current contract includes charges not only for calls, but also for related video visitations, $20 for 20 minutes and $2 per voice message, which all of it, frankly, may not sound like a lot, but it adds up quickly. Especially when the main income earner for a family is the person who is incarcerated. Prohibitively expensive phone calls impose an unjust burden on young children and other family members of incarcerated individuals, contributing to a cycle of family instability and incarceration. The cost barrier further separates children from their parents and individuals from potentially positive influences in their lives. A 2014 study of communities in 14 states found that the costs of maintaining contact by telephone or visitation contributed to unsustainable debt burdens for 1 out of 3 families. The cost applies to any individual awaiting a hearing or sentencing, not only those who are serving a sentence in the jail. In our county system, 5,000 in our county system, 5,000 housed by the county, over 70% of these individuals are unsentenced. So that means that if you are arrested tonight, you would be paying these high fees to call home before your first hearing. The human impact of losing communication with your children is unimaginable for most of us. But it happened to Georgina Mercado, a mother of 3 young children who was arrested in Barrio Logan in 2016. She was innocent and spent 3 months in jail until she was exonerated. For a time, she did not even know who was watching her children, 2, 4, and 6 years old, because of the difficulty and cost of communication. It is so painful that Georgina almost took a plea deal just so she could talk with her children again, even though she was innocent. Thankfully, her charges were cleared, and I know Georgina is with us today, and I thank her so very much for her bravery. For children, losing a parent to incarceration can be as traumatic as death or divorce. For parents, it can be the worst part of being detained. The impetus for this new contract is the high cost of phone calls as a primary barrier to staying in contact with loved ones. An innovative cost structure that better reflects the cost of service is much more appropriate in this day and age. Today's action will make San Diego County the largest county in California to eliminate profiteering from rates and fees charged for communications to and from detention facilities. The bottom line is that this change is good for all of us. So removing these communication barriers will help people be more successful and thrive after their release, resulting in better outcomes for everyone in our region. For that reason, I strongly hope that my colleagues stand with me today to support this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, for that. Let me ask the clerk. I think we have numerous public speakers on this item. Let me have the clerk call forward the public speakers, and then we will come back to board deliberation.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Also note for the record that we received 567 e-comments on this item. We have 58 requests to speak on this item. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You will hear a notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and callers will have 2 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Aaron, if you could please identify the first caller.
Yes, our first caller is 3083. (3083).
3083. Oprima asterisco 6 para poder hablar, por favor.
Buenas tardes, ¿sí me escuchas?
Sí, buenas tardes.
Sí. Mi nombre es María Flores. Pertenezco a miembro de ACE, la Alianza de Californianos para el Empoderamiento de la Comunidad.
Good afternoon, my name is Maria Flores. I belong to ACE,
Californianos para el Empoderamiento de la Comunidad.
the Alliance of Californians for the Empowerment of the Community Empowerment.
Estoy en la coalición Invertir a las Familias de San Diego.
And I'm in the ISDF coalition.
Urge a la Junta de Supervisores a que apoye la moción de los supervisores Lawson Dreamer.
I'm calling to ask for your support for Supervisor Lawson Reamer's board letter
De hacer las llamadas telefónicas gratuitas.
to make phone calls free of charge.
Todos merecen permanecer en comunicación y conectados con sus seres queridos.
Everyone deserves to remain in contact and be able to communicate with their loved ones.
El Condado de San Diego debe asegurarse de que el costo no sea una razón para que las personas encarceladas no puedan conectarse con sus seres queridos.
The County of San Diego should make sure that cost should never be the reason why people in jail are not able to communicate with their loved ones.
La forma principal en que las personas encarceladas pueden mantenerse conectadas con sus familias es a través de llamadas telefónicas.
The main way that people that are incarcerated maintain communication with their families is through telephone calls.
Y los costos asociados con las llamadas telefónicas afectan a las personas de bajos ingresos y de color, que se ven afectadas de manera desproporcionada por el sistema legal penal.
And the costs associated with making those calls affect people of color and those of low income that are already disproportionately affected by having low income, and the penal system is not helping them in this way maintain that contact.
El Departamento del Sheriff de San Diego y el Condado no deben de beneficiarse de las personas encarceladas o de sus seres queridos.
The Sheriff's Department in the County of San Diego should not benefit from incarcerated individuals or their loved ones.
Existen evidencias significativas que el contacto de familiares y amigos beneficia a las personas encarceladas. A largo plazo incluye la reducción de la reincidencia y la presentación de servicios esenciales.
There's a lot of evidence that points at the fact that people that remain in contact with family and friends long term have lower recidivism rates and are more active and participatory in the community.
La importancia de la conexión es vital, ya que las personas encarceladas lidian con el COVID-19 en estos tiempos de pandemia.
Una disculpa, señora, ¿qué dijo que era vital?
Sí, la importancia de la conexión es vital, ya que las personas encarceladas están lidiando con lo del COVID en este tiempo de pandemia y en algún otro tiempo otros problemas económicos.
Maintaining contact is crucial for these people, especially during the COVID pandemic and other situations that have arisen throughout history, and we must make sure that they are able to maintain that contact.
Esperamos contar con su apoyo y muchas gracias a la mesa directiva del Condado de San Diego.
We hope to have your support. Thank you very much, Board of Supervisors, County of San Diego.
Thank you. And our next caller is 5288. 5288.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Rebecca, and I'm a member of District 1. The pandemic has underscored how important it is for our county government to ensure that the cost of a phone call is not a barrier for families to connect with their incarcerated loved ones. San Diego should be doing all that it can to strengthen communication and connection between people in its jails and their families, not profiting from their unfortunate circumstances. I urge you to support Supervisor Lawson-Remer's motion to make phone calls free in county jails. It's time to put people over profits. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7498. 7498.
Good morning. Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Melissa Elder, and I'm a volunteer with Sunrise Movement San Diego, living in Sheriff Fletcher's district. I'd like to thank Supervisor Lawson-Remer's motion to make these phone calls free. As we know, the incarceration rates of our Black and Brown community members are higher compared to white counterparts in proportion, and a lot of the times they are incarcerated due to the school to prison pipeline because we're not investing in the communities fairly. So when these individuals are incarcerated, they need to be able to maintain communication with the outside world in order to be able to integrate back into society when they are finished with their prison sentences. We should not be making profit off of these phone calls and making sure that the county is doing everything they can to mitigate this school to prison pipeline, this prison industrial complex, and profiting off of incarcerated folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9358. 9358.
Hello, my name is Angelina Corsani, and I'm calling today on behalf of the Center on Policy Initiatives and the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. I urge the board to vote in support of this item and end the use of budget revenue generated from charging individuals who are incarcerated for making phone calls to their families. Our ISDF coalition has been requesting the end of this practice for several years now, and the Sheriff's Department has refused. The Sheriff's Department currently has a multi-million-dollar contract with Securus Technologies, a private company that forces individuals who are trapped in systems of incarceration to pay excessive and unaffordable rates in order to connect with their families in the outside world. This private for-profit company shares with the county and sheriff's department a portion of the profit it makes by exploiting these individuals and families. This is a corrupt system that technically incentivizes the sheriff's department to incarcerate as many people as possible in order to maximize their own profit. This practice is also inhumane and racist as it disproportionately harms low-income communities and communities of color. This board needs to take action and end this corrupt and disgusting practice. The board should vote in support of this item and direct the CAO to construct the upcoming fiscal year 2022 budget and all future budgets without this revenue source. This county should follow the lead of San Francisco County and provide free phone calls for individuals who are incarcerated and renegotiate its contract to ensure the lowest possible cost for providing the service. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 9961. 9961. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Lorraine Scott, and I am calling in support of this item. I urge all the members to vote to support it. I am a practicing Roman Catholic parishioner, and as such, I feel very strongly about the inherent dignity in every single human being, and forcing someone to pay exorbitant rates to be in touch with their loved ones is inhumane. And I'm also a big proponent of restorative justice. I want accountability, and I also want every person to be treated with dignity, and that means not cutting somebody off from their family. So this is having free phone calls to family members is a very small, doable step on this ultimate journey of transformation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 5302. 5302.
530.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, adelante.
Mi nombre es Mediam Goff y soy miembro de ACE, la Alianza de Californianos para el Empoderamiento de la Comunidad.
Good afternoon. My name is Mediam Goff, and I am a member of ACE, the Alliance for Community Empowerment, Californian Community Empowerment.
Estoy en la coalición Invertir en las Familias de San Diego y SDF para urgir a la Junta de Supervisores a que apoyen la moción de los supervisores Latson y Rimmer de hacer llamadas telefónicas gratuitas.
I am also a member of ISDF, and I'm calling today to urge the Board of Supervisors to support Supervisor Lawson-Remer's motion to make phone calls free.
Todos merecen permanecer en comunicación y conectados con sus seres queridos. El Condado de San Diego debe asegurarse de que el costo no sea una razón para la que las personas encarceladas no puedan conectarse con sus familias.
Everyone deserves to be able to stay in contact with their loved ones. The County of San Diego should make every effort to make sure that the cost is not prohibitive of people being able to stay in contact with their loved ones that are, people that are incarcerated should be able to stay in contact with their loved ones.
Aún así, los altos costos asociados con estas llamadas pueden ser una barrera o un impedimento para mantener el contacto con su familia.
High costs could be a barrier, stopping people from staying in contact with their loved ones.
El Departamento del Sheriff de San Diego y el condado no deben de beneficiarse de las personas encarceladas y mantenerlas alejadas de su familia. Gracias.
The San Diego Sheriff's Department and the County of San Diego should not benefit from incarcerated people and keep them away from their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2438. 2438.
Good afternoon. My name is Esmeralda Flores. I'm a policy advocate at the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial Counties. The ACLU is a proud member of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition, and we are here today to urge the Board of Supervisors to ensure that telephone calls in jails are free. Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, for taking the lead on this critical issue. People deserve to be in communication and connected with their loved ones who are incarcerated. Incarceration separates people from their families, who are their most important source of stability and support. San Diego County should be doing all it can to strengthen communication and connection between people in its jails and their families, not profiting from their circumstances. The pandemic has underscored how important it is that our county government ensure that the cost of a phone call isn't a barrier for families to connect with their incarcerated loved ones. Given that public health safety protocols prohibit in-person visitation, phone calls are an important way for families to communicate with incarcerated loved ones. Because people of color and low-income individuals are disproportionately incarcerated, they are also disproportionately impacted by these fees. Ensuring that calls are free is not only the humane thing to do, it will make us a more equitable region too. The Invest in San Diego Families Coalition urges this board to follow the example of San Francisco County, who last summer ended the practice of generating revenue from incarcerated people and their families through phone calls, commissary markups, and other services. We call on you, our Board of Supervisors, to vote yes to support Supervisor Lawson-Remer's motion to make phone calls free for people who are incarcerated. And then this practice is an immediate critical step San Diego County can take to address one of the many inequities that exist in our legal system. It's past time to pull people over profits. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6741. 6741.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlotte Masara, and I'm in favor of this item. I think we need to be more supportive of family reunification. In order to do that correctly, we need to be able to practice communication effectively. A lot of these inmates have children, and when these children go without that connection from their parents, naturally they will feel abandoned and start turning to other ways to cope. I think if we can solve something as simple as a free phone call, it will serve a greater purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8248. 8248.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm calling in favor of this. I have my partner had a loved one that was incarcerated, and his mother would drive down every weekend to visit her, to visit him, and to make the telephone calls to her. It was costing him an absorbent amount of money. And mind you, she was on disability, so she wasn't able to really talk to her son that often. By allowing the police to make profit on the prison system is just wrong. We need to allow them to be able to contact their loved ones, families, lawyers, whatever they need. So again, I'm in favor of this. Please look into your heart and see that this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you state your name for the record, please? Oh, I think we lost that caller. Our next caller is 8058. 8058.
Yes, hello. My name is Khalid Alexander. I'm with Pillars of the Community, and I was just calling in to encourage the supervisors to support Lawson Reamer's initiative to make jail phone calls free. I think the amount of comments that have been written in goes to speak towards the response we get from community members when our elected officials actually champion issues that matter to the community. So I would like to thank Lawson Reamer and all of those who are already in support of it, and just point out that profiting from the misery of others is not a business that our county or any county should be a part of. People who are incarcerated need to strengthen their relations with people on the outside and not break them. So again, please support this important initiative. This is an easy fix to a draconian problem.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5700. 5700.
Hi, my name is John Wee, and I'm an organizer with CBI at the IFDF Coalition. I want to thank Supervisor Tara Lawson Reamer for bringing this issue forward today, which our coalition have been advocating for years. Personally, the issue affects me. My younger brother was incarcerated for over 20 years before he passed away at the RDJ facility here in San Diego. Being able to stay in touch with my brother was very important to my mother. And I remember she was struggling with how expensive it was for the phone call with him. As an immigrant, she worked in a sweatshop and made 5 cents for every line she sold. So you can only imagine how she felt every time she received the phone bills. I remember how my brother would then call my mother, and during the part when the operator said, you have to collect call from, and a pause for the caller to announce their names, my brother would speak really fast before cutting off. He would repeat it for another 4 times to leave pieces of message that my mother would listen to and connect all of them together into a big message. That was unnecessary. The human connection is essential for the incarcerated folks. It is important for their well-being to keep contact with the outside world, to know that there is a world to look forward to after they leave. But forcing them to pay such a high price for even a simple call that most of us take for granted these days is outrageous. We should not subject incarcerated people and their family to price gouging by private for-profit company, and no county department should depend on revenue for this exploitation. It is our moral duty today to do what is right and end the practice of charging incarcerated folks and their family for phone calls. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2061. 2061.
Hi, yes. My name is Layla Aziz. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
I am calling in support of item number 3, and I want to express my deep gratitude to Supervisor Larson Reamer for this important measure. Right now, I want to speak for Georgina, who was arrested twice falsely as a mother of 3 young children. She was found innocent both times and languished in the county jail, wondering if she could call her family or if she needed to make sure her children could eat. I want to speak for Ramona, who was falsely arrested 2 years ago and languished in county jail with a $50,000 bail, trying to make bail and also trying to keep in contact with her family as she fought a case that she was innocent of and wondered sometimes if she should just give up and plead guilty so the nightmare would end, not being able to talk or see her family. I want to speak for Miguel, who was stuck in jail for a misdemeanor. The DA overcharged as a felony to keep him in there. He had his face bitten off and is now, forever, he will have those scars. Having to call his mother, who lived in North Carolina, and the exorbitant calls, the phone calls, and the cost. I want to speak for Miss Gina, Miss Alicia, and Miss Cheryl, who have mentally ill children currently housed in San Diego County jails, who have to call because of suicide and other issues to make sure that their children are okay. They keep their phones on and they pay those bills, because we know that if you go to San Diego County Jail, you may not make it out alive because it has become a mental health facility. I want to talk about Jonah right now, who is sitting in a San Diego jail with an overcharged bail of $500,000 for a charge that's $30,000 in the calls that he gives his partner, Ashanti, and his partner Ashanti, who doesn't have a job, who takes these calls. None of these people have been found guilty of any crime. San Diego has a goal of satisfying or closing all cases by prelim. And what it does is it makes people stay in there for 30, 60, 90 days, trying to keep in touch with their family. Thank you so much, Board of Supervisors, for taking on this very, very important initiative.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5114. 5114.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Connie Villalpando, and the reason I'm calling is to urge the Board of Supervisors to motion for Lawson Reamer for being the phone calls free. And due to this pandemic, I see so many people that needs to be communicated with their loved ones, and this is really, really is not cost effective. People is actually, trying to find out how they gonna go ahead and get their next meal, or how they're gonna come up with money to pay the rent. And, making these phone calls is very costly. And this is a time that is an emergency, really. And people needs to know that there is people waiting outside for them. People needs to know there's their love. We're not here to judge anybody for what their crimes are to be in jails, but we need to exercise compassion. We need to really put ourselves in their shoes one day. We never know what's going to happen to our lives. We never know if we're going to be charged for a crime that we don't commit. We don't know what's going to happen. So, just think about it. Think about the communication that is necessary for people that's in jail, with their loved ones, with their friends, with anybody that they need to. We don't want any more devastation that we already have here. So, I just really, really think that this is something that is liable. We can do this, and just in consideration to all the families, they have people incarcerated right now. It's good if they can this Board of Supervisors can just go ahead and make that motion to approve it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5192. 5192. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, Board of Supervisors. This is Reverend Shane Harris of the People's Association of Justice Advocates. As the president of this organization, we want to commend Supervisor Tara Lawson Raymer for her leadership in bringing forth such an important measure at such an important time. The reality is this, that San Diego County has the highest mortality rate among California's 6 largest jail systems that hold 3,700 or more people each day. The reality is that with this leading jail death rate, COVID-19, which is disproportionately affecting people of color, and people of color, Black and other minorities, are disproportionately locked up. The reality is that making jail phone calls is a good first step. And so I would ask that the supervisors would support this. This is an extraordinary step in the right direction. It's not the end game, but it's the beginning. And I think that making phone calls free should be a standard. It should be something that we do because it's human rights for someone to be able to make a phone call to their family or to stay connected. Finally, I'll say that we have to transform our jail systems. They have become a death sentence for too many low minor offenses where someone should not go in and end up dying inside of our jails. The first step to transforming our jail system and making it more rehabilitative would be to make jail phone calls free. So family and friends of those incarcerated, as well as those incarcerated, can stay connected instead of giving the prisons and the jails, instead of giving the jails in our county a profit for trying to stay connected. This must change, and today is a good first step in making that happen. So I urge the supervisors to vote yes in support of this extraordinary step.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9319. 9319.
Good evening, supervisors, and I would first of all like to thank Supervisor Lawson Reamer for bringing this really important issue to the people of San Diego. I would like to first off say that we have a moral responsibility to continue to fight for racial justice, and the first step in doing that is, again, what we're doing here today. Americans, the United States accounts for less than, right now, we owe reparations to our Black and Brown communities, including oppressed communities. And this is a perfect way to do that. We should not, families all over the country should not have to pay into our jail systems to talk to our family members. This issue affects me deeply and personally, as seeing as though my brother is currently locked up in one of our county jail systems. And sometimes I can't afford to send $30 or $50 his way so that I can talk to him on a daily basis. And we have an immense debt owed to an entire culture. And again, this is how we are able to bring reparations to our community, by enacting laws like this, by bringing back to the community, and by allowing, by breaking down these barriers that we've seen for centuries. And so I do want to thank you, and I want to urge all the supervisors to make these phone calls free. And then not only to do that, but to go farther. We have, like I said, a moral responsibility to go much farther in this arena. And I hope that we can do that today. Thank you.
And can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Danny Avitia.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9858. 9858.
Hello, my name is Malcolm. I'm calling in support of this agenda item. First thing I want to say is that we claim to want to pursue restorative justice. And one thing that hasn't really been restored is the millions of dollars that have been wasted in California to call people's families. Now, we know that in New Jersey, a federal judge ordered Global Tailing to pay $25 million back to inmates and people who spent money. But in California, we don't have such action. So if we're not going to pay the people back for all the money that they spent, at least we need to make the phone calls free from this point on. The next thing I want to mention is that we claim to care about the mental health crisis in San Diego and California. But we got to ask ourselves, how much does it affect a person's mental health for a man that's incarcerated with a sick mother who has to choose whether to pay her medical bill or pay money so she can talk to her son. And obviously she's going to choose to save her life. So if a man is sitting in there for a year or a year and a half or 2 years fighting this case and he can't talk to his sick mother, how does that affect his mental health? Or how about a woman who's sitting in there for 2 or 3 years fighting her case, worrying about what's going on with her children, can't afford to talk to them and hear their voice? This is a problem. We're making the mental health crisis even worse by not allowing people to have access to free calls. And finally, the last thing I want to mention is that we claim in America to want justice for all. Well, not having access to phone calls is one of the biggest causes of injustice in the system. Because if you can't get on the phone, your public defender probably doesn't collect calls. You have no access to talk to your counsel. You have no access to talk to your family, to relay messages to your lawyer. You're pretty much stuck in limbo for 6 months until your next court date, where they just have you waiting all day and just throw you in the courtroom for a few seconds to talk to your lawyer. You know, this is a cause of injustice. So this is a problem. And finally, I just want to say this, because I read the public comments and I saw some jerk say that we don't need to be paying taxpayers' money for free criminals to make calls. People in jail were accused of crimes. It doesn't mean that they committed it. And if we believe that we're innocent until proven guilty, we need to treat people as being innocent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 8965. 8965.
Good afternoon, supervisors. I am a resident of District 2. My name is Caitlin Bashaw, and I urge you to support item 3. We shouldn't be profiting from people in detention. A lot of the people that are being charged for these phone calls are not sentenced, so they are possibly innocent of all their charges. Our sheriffs should not be incentivized to arrest and jail people in order to increase their profits. Only 5% of the profits from these calls goes to probation programs, and it does not help get people back on the streets and reduce recidivism. People need to feel connected to their communities to be able to reduce recidivism. They need to be able to call their families and friends. We need to stop the suicides in detention and allow people to connect with their loved ones. Please support item 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2828. 2828.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Sanchez in District 3. I'm a volunteer for the ACLU. Charging incarcerated low-income individuals for phone calls is wrong and has negative ramifications. You're taking away money that they need for food, rent, school supplies for their children, and so much more. And this sends a message to everyone that money is more important than their well-being. How do you reform an offender? By showing them that you care. Charging them to make calls makes them more skeptical of the justice system. We've become a society that makes it difficult for the low-income household to survive. So we need to offer them a helping hand by giving them access to free phone calls so they can call their loved ones. Profiting from the incarcerated is wrong, especially now during the pandemic, when members of their household may have lost their jobs. So to the board, I urge you to support Lawson Reamer's initiative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2494. 2494.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Ann Barron. I'm a board member with the Peace Resource Center of San Diego. We're a regional public resource for providing peaceful and just alternatives to the current unjust social practices, one of which is the extensive cost of making phone calls from jail. So yes, 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 we absolutely support Supervisor Lawson Remer's motion to make calls free in county jails. And this current privatized telephone system is basically a charge on the backs of poor people who can ill afford it. So the cost of a call cannot be a barrier for families to connect COVID has made that open connection even more essential. We've received reports of prisoners placed in solitary confinement and becoming suicidal, and we're willing to share that information with the board. So the lack of these personal visits during COVID and a limited number of video conferences that are allowed is creating a mental health pandemic as well as a COVID pandemic. And we also agree that providing free phone calls is a major component for the safe, effective, and low-cost treatment of mental health. So during COVID, the public oversight of these institutions has been set back. Makes it even more important that families are in communication. It should be a right and not a luxury. It's incomprehensible that we would add more to the economic burden of those already imprisoned, especially those who've been imprisoned while they're awaiting their trial. We're talking about county jails where most people are there because they couldn't afford the bail. So we're going to add more to the economic burden by adding additional unfair fees and charges. And this is all due to incarceration posed by the state, not because they were found guilty. So we ask you to support mental health. We ask you to stop the abuse of phone charges on behalf of our incarcerated brothers and sisters. And I say this in memory of Cody Browder. He's an innocent teenager who killed himself after being jailed for 3 years at Rikers because he couldn't afford bail and he couldn't afford the phone call.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4974. 4974. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. (4974). Please try pressing *6 again to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. I guess this worked. Sorry, thank you very much. Michelle Krug, I would like to thank, I'm very grateful that Supervisor Lawson-Remer brought this before our Board of Supervisors. I have a very close friend that did some stupid things around drugs that only hurt himself, but by extension, his 2 little children that are now 4 and 10, his partner who is caring for the most fragile of our COVID patients. As a nurse, I just, the extension of where that trauma keeps being reintroduced as, you know, a daily situation with the families that are part of our community is just so agonizing. The 4-year-old that doesn't understand why she can't talk to her dad because mom's trying to pay for food. So I just really ask you to support this, and thank you so much, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, for bringing this up. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4143. 4143.
Good afternoon, Chair Fletcher and members of the Board of Supervisors. My name is Cathy Cahill. I'm a volunteer with the ACLU and a San Diego resident of District 6. I strongly support this motion to provide free calls and other communication services while incarcerated in our county detention facilities, and would like to thank Supervisor Lawson-Remer for bringing this to your attention. I am speaking as someone who has been on the other side of these calls made from someone in our local county jails, and I'm no stranger to how much these calls can add up each week. The number of calls made from an inmate hits most families who are already struggling with day-to-day living expenses, as well as them trying to send whatever they can to their loved ones while incarcerated so they can purchase stamps, envelopes, and food. COVID has taken away the ability for families to visit inmates, some traveling quite a distance using public transportation. These are visits they counted on to see their loved ones face-to-face to confirm their well-being, and should be allowed free calls given the circumstances of the pandemic. Calls made to families are not the only calls inmates are being charged for. Inmates are also using their phone cards purchased by family members to call their attorneys, another burden to these struggling families. Roughly 3 out of 4 inmates and their family members are also being penalized with these costs even before they are found guilty of the crime they are accused of. There are also many inmates who have spent years, some longer than 20 plus years, before being exonerated of a crime they were accused of, spending thousands of dollars to contact their family during their time of incarceration. These families are the innocent victims here and shouldn't have to pay the price. So I urge you to support Supervisor Lawson Reamer's motion to make calls free in our county jails. It's time San Diego puts people over profits. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this motion.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9040. 9040.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Faruq, a local community advocate and a constituent of Supervisor Anderson's district, and I stand with the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition to urge the Board of Supervisors to support Supervisor Lawson Reamer's motion to make these phone calls free. Everyone deserves to remain in communication and connected with loved ones. With folks not being able to see their loved ones because of COVID, San Diego County must ensure that the cost is not blocked to people that are incarcerated, so they are able to connect with their loved ones. The primary way that they're able to stay connected is through these phone calls, but these high costs are a big barrier to maintaining contact with loved ones who are incarcerated. The costs associated with phone calls impact low income and people of color who are disproportionately impacted by the criminal legal system. The San Diego Sheriff Department and the county should not profit from folks who are incarcerated or from their loved ones trying to contact them. Thank you to the Office of Lawson Reamer for taking this initiative on this critical issue, and I ask the County Board of Supervisors to support this motion and to make these phone calls free for incarcerated folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 4231. 4231.
My name is Shay Dawson, and I'm a resident of District 3. I am concerned with the high cost of phone calls at county jails. Everyone deserves to remain in communication and connected with their loved ones, and it is especially important for people who are incarcerated to know that their loved ones are safe during the pandemic. I urge the Board of Supervisors to support Supervisor Lawson Reamer's motion to make phone calls free in San Diego County jails. It's time to put people over profits. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1659. 1659.
Thank you. My name is Ann Olmstead, and I'm speaking today representing the League of Women Voters of North County, San Diego, and of San Diego. The League supports a criminal justice system that is just, effective, equitable, transparent, and that fosters public trust at all stages, including policing practices, pretrial procedures, sentencing, incarceration, and reentry. We believe our criminal justice system must, first, ensure no person suffers discrimination before the law due to their economic status. Two, ensure that all correctional systems provide humane, dignified, non-discriminatory treatment of incarcerated people and personnel. And third, encourage family and community visitations and ways to maintain contact. For these reasons, we advocate in favor of providing incarcerated persons access to free telephone calls and other communication services while incarcerated in county detention facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9839. 9839.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Alvarez, and I stand with the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition to urge the Board of Supervisors to support Supervisors Lawson Reamer's motion to make phone calls free. It is affecting not only those incarcerated, but also the families who are most of the time the ones paying for these calls. And and it makes it very hard for low-income families to stay in communication with their loved ones. Not only that, but the children whose parents are incarcerated as well, they should be able to stay in connection with their parents and not think that they were abandoned by their parents. I do have a brother who is incarcerated, and when my family and I do have the money to send him, he has to make a decision whether to put some money, into making phone calls to his family, to his kids, or to buy, necessary things like hygiene, paper, stamps, or even food. So I really urge you guys to take this into consideration to make the phone calls free. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4490. 4490.
Hello, my name is Cecilia James. I'm an advocate with Voices of Our City Choir and Voices of Dignity from District 1. I would like to respectfully request that the San Diego Board of Supervisors support Supervisor Tara Lawson-Reamer's proposal to end the practice of charging incarcerated people and their families for phone calls and other communication services. The cost of calls are prohibitively high and unaffordable for low-income families that are struggling to put food on the table, pay for medical costs, and care for their children. These families struggle to put money on their loved ones' telephone and commissary accounts, which is also prohibitively high. There are families that can't even afford to call their loved ones, which can be traumatic, especially to children, and disruptive to the rehabilitation of an incarcerated person. Studies show that there is a psychological impact social family separations have. It affects all family members and negatively impacts the incarcerated person from having positive influences from their families. It further despairs that person and takes away hope instead of rehabilitation. Incarcerated people need to have free access to communication services so they can work on repairing or develop positive family interactions. I'm aghast at the idea that the Sheriff's Department is profiting off the backs of these low-income families. It is unjust and gives the appearance of a conflict of interest. Where does the money go? The inmate welfare fund? Are the funds dispersed correctly? Is it the family's responsibility to fund the inmate welfare fund? In essence, that is what has been created. Finally, the county needs to end the predatory practice from vendors like Securus who profit from exorbitant communication costs and procure a vendor of the highest professional and ethical standards. It is time to end corporate profiteering from system-involved persons and their families and create no-cost telephone, video, and other communications. Thank you in advance for your support and also for your investment in homelessness and health services. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6365. 6365. Six, 365, please press *6 to unmute yourself. And if we don't hear from you, oh, here we go.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. I thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Mark Stuzman, and I live in District 3. I am one of the ACLU Volunteer North County Core leaders, and I speak in favor of Supervisor Lawson-Reamer's motion to make calls free in county jails. This matter is personal for me. About 5 years ago, my mentally ill adult daughter was involved in a domestic dispute and spent a long weekend in the county jail. Leaving aside for another day the intersectionality issue of mental illness and our criminal justice system touched upon under item 2 today, thank you for that vote, I'd like to share my experience of how our county jail call system traumatizes the families it touches. First, there's the wait for the first call from jail after you learn your loved one has been arrested. I tried to figure a way to call my 5'4", 110-pound bipolar daughter as soon as I heard she was arrested, but it was days before she was finally able to call out to me. And then you learn that you have to pay an arm and a leg just to hear the voice of your loved one. At one of the most emotionally fragile moments of life, when the unarraigned and presumed to be innocent incarcerated are going through the trauma of confronting the power of our criminal justice system, the county spits in your eye and imposes an exorbitant fee on the one means of comfort available, calling and consoling your loved one. Now, I happen to be a corporate securities attorney, and I could afford to pay this outrageous fee, so I found it to be an insult. Imagine how someone feels who has to decide what bill not to pay in order to talk to their incarcerated loved one. I find the real life impact such an expense has on our lower income, over-policed communities, already reeling financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, abhorrent. The county should not be making a profit off, literally, its captive residents. San Diego County should be fostering health in our communities and doing all it can to strengthen communication and connection between people in its jails and their families, not profiting from their unfortunate circumstances. Thank you for considering my experience when you vote.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9967. 9967. Please press *6.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Mendelson. I'm a resident of District 5. I'm a retired 19-year Orange County prosecutor. The majority of time I spent prosecuting criminal street gang and homicide crimes. I'm opposed to the free access to jail phone calls the way it's currently structured. I would ask the board to consider a few things. First of all, my experience makes me well aware that making jail calls easier will facilitate witness intimidation, gang business, drug trafficking, solicitations of hits and murders, while making taxpayers foot the bill not only for the free calls, but also for the programs which benefit from this. I agree that there should be a review. In Orange County, I know that the Orange County Grand Jury has an oversight responsibility for these type of programs, and I would urge that the Board of Supervisors try to institute something like that down here. According to the newspaper the other day, the phone income that the sheriffs get goes not only to the probation department to operate juvenile detention centers, but it also goes to the department's inmate welfare fund, which pays for educational programs and welfare packets for the inmates. I would urge that in further review of this program, that it's made sure that money does go to support inmate welfare in the jail and not somewhere else. I would also suggest that with the computer technology that we have today, there should be a way where inmates can register and family, or you can verify that an inmate, if he's making a reduced rate call or if it elects to be free calls, is indeed calling family members and not calling fellow gang members, potential witnesses, and the like. They already do that so that inmates can get calls to their attorneys without the calls being recorded. There's a lot to this that I think that the board should look at and get special oversight before they make this measure the way it's currently structured. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0893. 0893.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Yasmin Abed, and I'm the youth organizer with Mid-City CAN, and I live in District 2. Thank you all for taking the time to prioritize this issue, and especially thank you for Supervisor Lawson Remmer for making sure that this is on the agenda and this is a priority for your office in our county. I'm calling today to ask the rest of the Board of Supervisors to stand with and support this proposal to end the practice of charging incarcerated folks and their families for phone calls. This practice disproportionately harms Black, Indigenous, and low-income communities of color because we know that our criminal justice system disproportionately affects our communities. And it also imposes exorbitant phone fees, violates incarcerated people's rights, places an unjust financial burden on them and their families, and profits from a system of incarceration. It is past time to end this exploitative and unjust practice by the County of San Diego. Thank you all for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1898. 1898. Please press *6.
Hi, my name is Ariana Federico. I am the lead organizer at Mid-City CAN, and I'm here calling to stand in solidarity with Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. We are urging for the Board of Supervisors to support Supervisor Lawson Reamer's motion to make free phone calls. I just want to share out and uplift at what everyone had mentioned. It is important that we are able to give folks who are currently incarcerated access to phone calls to call their families. This, especially during the time of COVID, is very crucial since COVID has directly impacted everyone. If we really want to make sure that we're caring for our folks, we need to make sure that they have access to their needs, including essential lifelines to their loved ones. So along with our coalition, I am here to stand in solidarity and really ask Board of Supervisors to support this motion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5362. 5362.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Judy, and I'm calling on behalf of Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest and the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. I urge the Board of Supervisors to support Supervisor Lawson Raymer's motion to make phone calls free. The San Diego Sheriff Department and the county should not profit from those who are incarcerated or their loved ones to fund jail operations. There is significant evidence that contact with family and friends benefits incarcerated people in the long run and provides essential lifelines to their loved ones. The importance of connection is vital as people who are incarcerated deal with COVID-19. Please vote yes to support Supervisor Lawson Raymer's motion to end this inhumane and racist practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6687. 6687. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Priscilla Willis. I'm County of San Diego Union Employees Chapter President and an 18-year employee with the County of San Diego and a member of District 4. I'm here today to speak on agenda item number 3, providing an incarcerated person free phone calls and other communication services while in there. I would like to applaud you, Supervisor Lawson Raymer, seeing the needs of hurting families. We all know that racism is a public health crisis, especially for people of color. When they are arrested, it doesn't mean innocent until proven guilty. It's the other way around, guilty until proven innocent. It's time for change for the communication system to San Diego County incarcerated persons, and San Diego County can take that step by getting rid of Securus technology. Securus is the same as private prisons. The families and the incarcerated persons that is held prisoner, they are held prisoner to the phone system to communicate with loved ones. The families that are affected by Securus are poor families, and their loved ones are left in prison for as long as possible for monetary gain for the Sheriff Department. Securus is everywhere because Securus Tech is the communications contact that allows me to be able to talk to my family member who is incarcerated in Louisiana. The recorded messages before you speak to your loved one takes up your time, so you really don't get that time you're paid for. There are numerous technical difficulties that when you try to call customer service, you can only stay on hold for 2 hours at a time. And then they hang you up and you have to start over again. Excuse me. The fees to add money to communicate with your loved one is high. The more time you buy, the more fees you pay. I am 100% in favor of this agenda item passing. I really hope it passes because if it does, the state of California can set the example for other states that use the same system. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5715. 5715.
Good afternoon, County Supervisors. My name is Watson, and I am with Youth Will and the Invest in San Diego Family Coalition. I am also a resident of District 2. I want to first thank Supervisor Lawson Raymer for putting this item forward. Everyone, whether incarcerated or not, deserves to have access to their loved ones. We know that the criminal justice system disproportionately impacts Black and Brown communities, and requiring families whose loved ones are behind bars to pay this fee is another way of profiting off of struggling families because they are spending money that they could otherwise use for other resources to simply stay in touch with their loved ones. Our government claims that the purpose of incarceration is rehabilitation. How is it rehabilitative when those who are struggling with their mental health cannot even speak with their families? The government should not be profiting off of the backs of struggling families just so they can stay in touch with their families behind bars. So please stop this capitalistically inhumane practice and allow free phone calls. Thank you, and I hope you vote in favor of this item.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 9706. 9706.
Good afternoon, County Board of Supervisors. My name is Ahmad Mahmoud. I'm a resident of District 4. And first of all, I just want to say to the Orange County prosecutor who came onto this call earlier and used racist tropes to demand that the county votes against this motion, please check yourself, because you sound like them white people back in the days of chattel slavery who would say you give a slave a little bit of freedom that they're going to turn and revolt on the freaking masters. That's what you sound like. It's pure racism, pure anti-Blackness at its finest. This county has been talking about the pandemic every single week, having weekly briefings. And guess what? They have been mentioning that the pandemic is more than just a physical virus that hurts your physical health. It also hurts your mental health. And you know who's missing out in this conversation about mental health? Incarcerated people, their families, and their loved ones. They too deserve to be included in this conversation. No one, no institution, no public institution of this country should profit off the basic human right of communication between incarcerated folks and their loved ones. When we talk about Women's History Month this month, we just talked about Black History Month. This is the smallest thing that you can do. Nora Vargas, Nathan Fletcher, Jim Desmond, this is the smallest thing you can do to take a step foot to justice for everyone. I'm disappointed with some of the things that I heard on this phone call, but I'm also proud of my community members who have came on here and demanded justice. Please make the right decision and vote in favor of this motion, and don't use money to incarcerate more people. That makes no sense. Oh, we should keep this money because it helps us with the juvenile detention center. How the hell does that make any sense? And what does that make any sense? Let's stop evil and let's do more good, and let's lower the recidivism rate by doing the right thing and making phone calls free so people can be in contact with their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 8358. 8358.
Hello, my name is Michael White. I work for Pillars of the Community. I just want to vote in favor of this measure and say thank you to Lawson Reamer for bringing it to the measure. I just want to speak from the other side. I spent 13 months in the county jail fighting the case that I was acquitted on. And my mother was on fixed income, and she sacrificed so many things just so I could be able to call. And to the day she died, she was still paying off things from that incident. I don't know if you know what it feels like to not be able to call your baby on her 6th birthday and wish her a happy birthday. But if you don't have the means to do it, then you can't. And at that age, they really don't understand that. You know what I'm saying? And quite frankly, I don't either. So I hope you guys really take this into consideration. A basic human right of communication is key, and it keeps the prisoners really calm down while they're facing the tumultuous time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5273. 5273.
Good afternoon. My name is Ismahan Abdullahi with MassPace as part of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. And I'm calling on our County Board of Supervisors to support this proposal. We know for sure that when it comes to low income and communities of color, this is a barrier that our families are currently incarcerated are facing in terms of connecting and communicating with their loved ones. I for sure, just thinking about the experience of our family and what we went through in regards to connecting with family members who have been incarcerated for a very long time. And in the beginning, it was really, really difficult and a struggle to connect with them, even at times when we were worried about their life and worried about their well-being as they are currently incarcerated. So this is one barrier that we can lift, a barrier that completely disproportionately impacts low-income families and communities of color. So it's past time for us to really end this exploitive and unjust practice by the County of San Diego. And I'm hoping as we follow suit with San Francisco and New York and other places that this becomes a ripple effect for the nation because it's high time that we stop this practice. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you all support this proposal.
Thank you. Our next caller is 6789. 6789.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi, my name is Patricia, and I'm calling today. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I think I put you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi. Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Patricia, and I'm a member of ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. And I'm calling today because...
And we lost our connection with that caller. So if she calls back, we will resume that testimony, but we'll go on to 4119. 4119.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, this is Jen French. I'm a resident of District 4, and I'm calling in support of Invest in San Diego Families Coalition and Supervisor Lawson Reamer. Please vote yes on item 3 and end the exploitative process of charging incarcerated people and their families for phone calls. There is no reason for the county to profit off of the misery of these folks at any time, especially during a pandemic. It's outdated, it's cruel, it's shameful, and as other callers have pointed out, the racist arguments against this item have no place in San Diego. San Diegans deserve better, and let's lead by example. Please vote yes on item 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 0300. 0300.
Hi, my name is Joanna Acatella, and I serve as the Vice President of External Affairs for Eventive, parent company of Securus. Our organization has the privilege of providing telephone and video connections and have been proudly serving families in San Diego County for the last 9 years. I am here today to reiterate our support for providing services in a manner that best suits the needs of the county as determined by the county. We share your interest in increasing the affordability and access of communications for incarcerated individuals and their loved ones. During the pandemic, we partnered with the county to provide more than 36,000 free calls and 28,000 discounted video connections to keep families connected. Securus is committed to working with all of our institutional customers to broaden rate relief for more consumers, identify new ways to restructure funding models while meeting the needs of all those that are being served, including offering zero commission and fully taxpayer-funded options to make free calls, as an example. Securus is the first correctional telephone provider to have negotiated and implemented a full taxpayer-funded model in which the full cost of telephone calls is handled by the agency and the county. In this case, it was New York City's jail system. We have worked individually with every state agency and county jail that we serve to offer funding models that best fit their needs as determined by their constituents. And we are happy to share our experiences and our lessons learned on how to get there in the most efficient manner, if that is what San Diego County Council and its supervisors decides is most appropriate for your needs. There are several different ways this can be accomplished, while taking into consideration the underlying services that go along with communication and how the staff can be prepared to manage the expected changes. Securus remains open to finding other opportunities to make staying connected more accessible and affordable for loved ones. If San Diego County officials select a taxpayer-funded model for phone calls and video connections, we will work to quickly implement that model while still providing the services needed to keep the facility, staff, the incarcerated, and their loved ones in the community safe. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to 6789, the caller whose call dropped in the midst of testimony. So 6789, you may finish your testimony now.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was, I don't know, it just cut off on me. Again, my name is Patricia, and I'm calling, I'm a member of ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, and the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition. And I'm calling today to urge the Board of Supervisors and support our supervisors, Lawson Reamer, Tara Lawson Reamer, motions because to make these calls, you know, to make these calls free. I believe that, you know, we pay a cell phone price, which is maybe 35 a month, maybe 40 a month. And we call whoever, and we call out of state, we could call Hawaii, we can call Mexico, we can call anywhere, and our calls will be in the price range that we can afford because of our, you know, contract. Now, you know, I feel that the San Diego Sheriff Department and the county should not profit from those who are incarcerated or those, you know, or their loved ones to fund jail operations. I don't think that's fair. People should be in contact. Like I said, you know, depending on your contract, you know, you're allowed to call wherever, you know, especially, you know, when there's emergencies. Usually when people are in there, people want to make sure that their loved ones are safe. Really, that's all I want to say. I mean, the sheriffs, they get enough money as it is, you know, and I just feel that they shouldn't have to profit off of, you know, the little bit. And usually it's people that are, you know, hardworking, that, you know, their families are in there. And I get it, you know, they did whatever they did, but you know what, it doesn't justify for the family to have to pay for all these expensive calls. That's all I need to say. So I'm calling in support. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me. Goodbye.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item. Chair Fletcher.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who called in on this item. Let me go to my colleagues and ask if any of them have any comments or questions regarding this item. I see Supervisor Anderson. We will go first to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think it's absolutely the correct direction for us to go. I've been a big supporter of this throughout my entire career. I've listened to all the speakers, and I think that some people may not understand the fees that come off of this go to programming to help people with recidivism. So the money that they're raising is an important money, and I looked at the letter, and we're going to the county asking to look at options for backfilling. What I'm worried about is, while this is a great program moving forward, the money that the 2.8 million or just short of it is used for great programs too. So I just want to make sure that we're not squeezing on the balloon and sending air from one side of the balloon to the other, and that the net outcomes aren't better. I think having free phone calls is important, but I also think that the programming that it funds is equally important. So I'd like to make sure that we don't lose those programs along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments or discussions? All right, I'm happy
to make a motion, second the motion, Chair Fletcher.
Thank you. So we had a motion from Supervisor Lawson-Remer, a second by Vice Chair Vargas. I too just want to weigh in support of this item. It's been an issue that has troubled me for some time. I voted against the contract award for this program under a previous board, and have been very supportive of state efforts to do this. And I want to commend Supervisor Lawson-Remer for beginning the process of getting us to a point of ending this practice and making sure we go through. So let me just ask Supervisor Lawson-Remer, do you have any final comments or thoughts before we vote? If not, we have a motion by yourself and a second by Vice Chair Nora Vargas.
I want to really appreciate everyone who showed up to make their voice heard today, and we hear you and we feel you and we're with you, and you know, thank you for being here.
All right, with that, let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Yes.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll now move to agenda item 7. This was an item that was pulled by the public. This is our third consideration of an adoption of an ordinance related to San Diego County General Fund program. While we see if that caller is there, I'm happy to put a motion on the table to approve agenda item 7. Let me ask the clerk if we can call forward the public speaker on this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Yes, we have 2 individuals that requested to speak on this item. If those individuals could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. Again, those callers for item 7. While we're waiting for those callers, I'll note for the record that we received 2 e-comments on this item.
Mr. Chair, do you need a second on this motion?
I do.
Please include me.
So seconded. Let me real quick while we wait for any public comments, if any of my board members have, colleagues have any comments on this item?
I do, Chair Fletcher. So I am really happy to support this item. And now that we have had the analysis that has provided, I think it's really clear to me that it makes sense to eliminate the requirement for the lien. The analysis that I requested back demonstrated, I think, not only that a very small fraction of the individuals that receive the assistance to the program are able to pay back to the amount that they were provided at one point. So it's clear that people seeking assistance because of need, are impacted. So as a county, we do need to continue to uplift people. And personally, this lien requirement seems to be penalizing people that are able to get ahead. And so by having them pay back the amount that was provided to them when they were in need. So I do have a quick question. Is the county currently in the process of collecting any payments from individuals? And if so, how long does this process take? And would those funds be collected prior to this ordinance going to effect? Or would it be after? With that question, just for clarification, I am happy to support this item.
Ask staff if they know that information.
Supervisor Vargas, this is Rick Wani. And so currently, the ordinance states that the general relief lien is still in place. It is still being collected upon through escrow transactions. And so this action today would terminate that process once the county ordinance is updated.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Yes, I likewise just want to, note how important this is. When people are in the worst possible position and really stuck, and then instead of making it easy for people to get their lives going in the right direction, we put in barriers and we make it difficult. And in fact, one of the, I think, findings of the report that I found so compelling is that it was costing the county essentially the same amount to run the program as it was recuperating in fees and those lien funds. So essentially, it was really just a punitive program, and I'm just really happy to see us moving in a different direction in our county.
Thank you. Let me go back to the clerk, see if we have our public speakers on the line.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Yes, we have one of the 2 callers has dialed in, and Aaron, if you could please identify that caller, and if the caller could please state their name for the audio record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Yes, 9979. You may proceed.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chairman Fletcher and fellow board supervisors. My name is Ellis Rose, and I'm a homeless advocate, and I am speaking in favor of this ordinance to reform the application process for general relief. Allowing online applications, especially during this pandemic, is a no-brainer. But quite frankly, its need is long past due. Having been through it myself, in-person applications are not necessary. More importantly, removing the lien requirement is even more significant. The lien requirement has been part of the process for far too long. It creates an unnecessary psychological barrier and clearly has no meaningful impact other than to discourage applicants despite their real need to apply. So I urge all of you, please pass this needed reform, and to thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item, Chair Fletcher.
All right, thank you, Ellis. Appreciate you calling in. We have a motion by myself, a second by Supervisor Anderson. Would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll now move to agenda item 12, a sustainable initiative to uplift boys and men of color. This is the board letter brought forward by Vice Chair Vargas and myself. I'd like to turn it over first to Vice Chair Vargas, if she has any introductory comments on this item.
Before Vice Chair Vargas begins her comments, any members of the public that requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. You will be muted until it is your turn to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Chair Fletcher. This is a very personal issue for me, as it is for our community. As many of you know, the system is stacked against many of our men of color due to existing criminalizing policies across our institutions. From very young ages, boys and young men of color are underrepresented among youth who excel in school and overrepresented among those with low grades, low test scores, and disciplinary problems. As the first woman of color, first Latina on the Board of Supervisors, I'm humbled and privileged to bring this initiative forward to bring an equitable and sustainable approach to address issues facing our young boys of men of color, and really looking at it from a systemic change, long-term institutional impact for our communities. I want to emphasize that throughout my tenure, I will absolutely continue to fight for initiatives that impact girls and women of color. However, today's initiative is in honor of all those young men and those formerly incarcerated men who I've met through my trajectory and who entrusted me with their story, for their families that grew up without father figures and mentors in their development. As many of those young men shared, if they had been given a different opportunity and support, their lives would have been immensely different. The County of San Diego has decided to address racism as a public health care crisis. We've led that initiative, and through that lens, we've begun to address institutional racism. Systemic oppression against boys and men of color has been rampant in probation, jails, and education, including high school and college admissions and graduation rates. Though in school, through school policing, youth of color are more likely to be punished for minor actions like doodling on a desk, talking back, or violating a dress code, leading to the criminalization of youth. Even when an offense does not lead to an arrest, Black and brown students are still subject to harsher punishments than white students. In zip codes in my district, there are policing practices that profile our young men of color before a crime is even committed. My district is disproportionately impacted by poverty that gets treated like a crime in our county. For generations, our young boys of color have been ignored, abused, and over-policed. Their realities are vastly different than their peers, and they have fallen prey to the school-to-prison pipeline. In San Diego County, 19% of the youth on probation are Black and 57% are Latino. On the adult side, 16% of the adults on probation are Black and 39% are Latino. We often describe boys of color as at risk or being vulnerable, but our young boys were not born at risk. They are systematically oppressed. Instead, our societal failures have placed our young boys of color at risk of harm, disease, crime, and abuse. This initiative to address issues disproportionately facing boys and men of color is work that I started decades ago as Executive Director of Latino Issues Forum. In order for us to build an equitable future in San Diego, we must take deliberate and intentional action to invest in these young boys of color and their support system through our collaborative approach. I urge you, my colleagues, to support this initiative that will direct the county to create a sustainable initiative that will take an active role in addressing the school-to-prison pipeline. Working with the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, the county will be partnering with education officials and community organizations and bringing forth wraparound services and trauma support systems to our children and their legal guardians. This initiative will assist and provide a variety of programs, including access to healthy food, housing, job training, tutoring assistance, mental health counseling, substance abuse counseling, and related case management. The second component of this initiative will focus on developing and integrating a workforce development program targeting youth and young adults. This program will be centered around education, employment, housing, and related case management. In consultation with the Office of Equity and Racial Justice and in alignment with the values proposed by this newly established office that also has the resources to be able to allocate opportunities and find opportunities for our youth. We are excited to work with the San Diego County Workforce Partnership and other community organizations to take joint action in lowering the rates of recidivism. Both components of this initiative cannot be done without the help of the community organizations and educational institutions that have been doing the work on the ground. The tireless work of these folks must be recognized and are a necessary partner as we continue this fight for equity. And I'm so grateful for so many of them for giving me input as we were working on this board letter. With the help of credible messengers and education officials, we can begin unraveling the systemic practices that have plagued our communities for generations. Fellow board members, I respectfully request your a vote to better serve our young boys and men of color and do our part in helping them thrive in San Diego County. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask the clerk, why don't we call forward our public speakers and then we'll come back for board deliberation.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. I'll note for the record that we received 5 e-comments on this item, and we have 14 requests to speak. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. You'll hear this sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Erin, if you could please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 4284. 4284.
Hi, this is Gabby Mian. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the YMCA of San Diego County, and I'm calling in to thank Chair Fletcher and the supervisors for the opportunity to advocate support for this important issue. This action has brought forth by Chair Fletcher and Vice Chair Vargas is incredibly close to the history and continued commitment of the YMCA of San Diego County. As we renew our commitment to actively fight against inequities that disproportionately impact our Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our communities. This includes a new vision we are forming in District 1 for our Board of View Family YMCA and the Jackie Robinson Family YMCA branches. Through our work in Southeast San Diego, Otay Mesa, and South Bay communities, we recognize the need for intentional support and connection for boys and men of color. The county's leadership on this and having it be within the scope of work for the county's Office of Equity and Racial Justice is an important step in the commitment to being anti-racist. So thank you for taking that step. This action's intention to address integrated services, which would include access to healthy foods, housing, job training, tutoring assistance, mental health counseling, and related case management, as well as coalescing providers to provide these services to boys and their caregivers, will help move the need for much needed change. As an agency doing deep work with prevention, early intervention, and diversion across the county, we recognize that bias and systemic racism that impacts children, youth, and their families begins at a very young age. In our behavior consultation programs, we are interrupting the preschool to prison pipeline, and in hosting the college and career readiness program pre-pandemic in San Isidro, we gave teens new access to resources to find a path best for them. There's so much more we can do together. Human dignity and empathy are paramount always, which I do have to add includes access to phone calls for those incarcerated. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to listening more from the community.
Thank you. Our next caller is 4419. 4419.
Good afternoon to the County Board of Supervisors. My name is Cynthia Williams. My concern is in the area of providing a mental health checkup for all African American county employees. During the tragedy of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other victims in 2020, African American county employees suffered mental trauma, whether they admit it or not, but no one responded or offered an olive branch of goodwill. Healing our hearts and minds from racial injustice we have experienced in the past is crucial to moving forward. Trust is a huge component of that healing process. There must be a genuine approach to creating a space where trust can be nurtured and grown. African Americans continue to show up to work every day to serve in spite of trauma and the status of their mental health. Wearing a mask is nothing new for us. Erasing racial injustice in the county is simply to care enough to confront. If the efforts to heal and restore African American employees prove successful, it will reset the course of time and allow us the space to breathe. The mental health of African Americans must be a priority. Thank you for your time. We look forward to great changes within the scope of San Diego County.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1898. 1898. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Ariana Federico. I am calling in support of Supervisor Nora Vargas and her letter to support young men and boys of color. I am the lead organizer at Mid-City CAN, and I work closely with young people, specifically our youth council. I've also worked previously as a domestic violence worker directly with families who have been impacted by domestic violence if they've been fleeing from their home. And I do see that there is a really big need to really start addressing the need we provide for our young people. And with that, I am saying in uplifting the services and trauma support that should be available for at-risk youth and their parents and guardians. I don't think that we are doing enough as a county, and this is a really good opportunity to start taking into consideration how we care for our families. It is crucial that young people start becoming engaged in community and introduced in workforce development. And we have seen studies in the past that this has really impacted them and how they contribute to the workforce as they grow into being adults. And by providing education, employment, and housing, and further case management, we are able to then ensure that young people are being taken care of as well as their families. So I'm here in support of Supervisor Nora Vargas and her initiative for young boys and men of color. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6796. 6796.
Hello, my name is Mamie McCall, and I'm a member of the AAAC African American Action Committee, also an SEIU member for the Local 221, and an employee of the San Diego Housing Commission. I am a caseworker, and I support the Uplifting Boys and Men in Color. My mother worked for the YMCA Boys and Girls Club of America as a housekeeper and a daily porter. I'm expressing a concern for the public health crisis of racism in this county. It is real, and it impacts the work that I do as a public service employee. There is a high priority and support for education to have the regular dialogue and continued improvement and progress for racial equality at all employers, including the San Diego Housing Commission. I have a strong passion and in regards to having cultural sensitivity, diversity, and our unconscious bias training, seminars, training, and education on a regular, consistent basis. At my current office of the San Diego Housing Commission, we have not had any cultural sensitivity and or diversity training since 2019. I am here to support and foster goodwill with the consistency throughout our country to have the continual racial information and education for uplifting boys and men in our men of color, plus women, to be treated equally with dignity and respect of life. This is our right. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5961. 5961.
Good afternoon. My name is Iris Trammell. I am a 14-year county employee. I am the president of the African American Action Committee for SEIU Local 221 and the treasurer for the local. I am in full agreement on this initiative to uplift boys and men of color in our county. As a lifelong resident of District 4 in San Diego, growing up within the school systems here, I am fully aware of the need for this initiative, not only for boys and men, but also for girls and women. I would hope with the new formation of the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, led by Andrew Strong, will take a strong lead on this. I am requesting that within this initiative, that a hiring component be added to it. Recently, I was given information that says that African Americans only make up 4% of the employees working for the San Diego County. And when it was just 8% just 2 years ago. This needs to be addressed, not only with this initiative, but there also needs to be a coordinated effort by Human Resources, the Human Rights Commission, and the African American Association of County Employees, which I am a member, to work on the low numbers of African Americans working for the county. I will gladly assist in this effort as the president of the African American Action Committee of SEIU Local 221 and a member of the African American Association of County Employees. I am also requesting that I have a seat on the Human Rights Commission and on the Office of the Equity and Racial Justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5362. 5362.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Judy Howell, and I'm calling on behalf of Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest in support of the initiative brought by Chair Nathan Fletcher and Vice Chair Nora Vargas to provide sustainable and equitable resources and solutions for youth and men of color. For centuries, white supremacy, institutional racism, over-policing, lack of resources, and a history of neglect have prevented Black and Indigenous youth and men of color from living full, safe, and prosperous lives. As a reproductive rights organization, we recognize systematic barriers set in place that prevent people from being able to make decisions about their own lives. Restorative measures are needed to support and uplift Black people, Indigenous people, and communities of color across San Diego County. Additionally, we urge the use of trauma-informed services and culturally competent staff with continued training of these staff members to ensure best practices are being updated and refined. For too long, the county budget has shown preference in policing and an underinvestment in essential services that keep our communities healthy and safe. Planned Parenthood Action Fund of the Pacific Southwest supports Chair Nathan Fletcher and Vice Chair Nora Vargas' initiative to provide sustainable and equitable resources and solutions for youth and men of color. Thank you.
Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Dee Alexander Myers, and I support the initiative. But I also want to talk about some of the history that was a part of County San Diego. Leon Williams, Jim Young, Paul Sims, Jim Ford, Leroy Martin, and my late father, Collins Munns. Who are these men? These were the Black men who led the county of San Diego in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It was a board of supervisors and men who were in upper management in the county of San Diego. They were highly educated and brought the best and the brightest with them. But when I retired after serving the county of San Diego for 32 years, the legacy of my father's generation was not carried out. My generation of Black males and females were missing in a diverse San Diego County. Many people that I know score 100 on tests but were never called. You see, whoever was doing the interviewing promoted people that they had already wanted or picked. We in our San Diego County lost our way. How do we change? We asked for a vote, a seat at the table. I am also a member of African American Caucus of Local 221. We are asking for a seat at the table to help Human Resources to change to change the cement ceiling that has been put in place for Black men and women who want to be a part of the change in the county. I thank you.
Thank you. Next caller is 6687. 6687.
Good afternoon and hello to the supervisors, Fletcher and supervisors. My name is Priscilla Willis, 18-year employee with the County of San Diego and County Chapter President for all SEIU union members. I am also a member of the African American Action Committee, my president, Iris K. Trammell. I strongly support this initiative to uplift boys and men of color under the Office of Equity and Racial Justice. As a mother of a young Black man, I've had to teach my son that when he was born with 2 strikes against him. First strike, he's a boy. Second, he's African American. I have taught my son to be respectful with all adult figures, no matter what. You see, my son is autistic. And after what happened to Elijah McClain, the young autistic man that was walking home from the store and stopped by the police of Aurora, Colorado, they killed that young man for no reason whatsoever. When my son go out to walk our dogs, I'm frantic. I make sure he takes his ID, but I tell him to keep it in his hand so he don't have to dig in his pockets and possibly get killed. I am my son's only protector, and I know I have held him back because if I could, I would never let him leave home. Black men and boys need that extra support. I just hope this agenda item is not just for show. There has been a lot of great changes taking place with this current Board of Supervisors, and it's encouraging. This is a great start, San Diego County, but don't forget, Board of Supervisors, but don't forget about your Black men that work for San Diego County, because there is a huge disparity within the employer of San Diego County. If you get a chance, take a look and see how many Black men are in leadership, and women too. Dismantling barriers for our youngest and most at-risk constituents is crucial to the future of our county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0942. 0942.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Aaron Garrett. I'm a member of SEIU Local 221. I've worked for the county for almost 11 years. I currently work as a protective services worker in the Extended Foster Care Program, or EFC. I strongly support this initiative to uplift boys and men of color under the Office of Equity and Racial Justice. The county must play a central role in dismantling structural racism. I know this initiative is crucial because I have 25 youth on my caseload and only 3 of them are Caucasian. This is extremely disproportionate when it comes to the racial makeup of San Diego as a whole. The county has preyed upon families of color to some extent, going into their homes with biased lenses, which result in the disproportionality. Within the last several months, some of my youth of color's cases I manage have experienced the following, but are not limited to: passing of drug overdose, being assaulted with a deadly weapon and almost losing their lives, attempting several times to overdose on psychotropic medications due to mental health issues, or no longer wanting to live, assaulting 2 other youth with a deadly weapon, seriously injuring them, being alleged to have sexually assaulted another youth in the program and posting it on social media. I'm required to see these youth monthly, despite the hazards which are present in seeing them, such as being a danger to themselves or others, COVID-19, and trying to help them navigate the complicated lives we have created for them. If this is how our youth of color are ending up after being in our system for a good portion of their lives, how are we keeping them safe and how are we making their lives better? We aren't, because we are overworked, underpaid. We create unhealthy environments for our youth to stay in, such as Polinsky Children's Center and group homes where youth who are traumatized are lumped together and create a normalization of trauma for everyone they encounter, including us as workers and our secondary trauma. When the county was audited and required to employ 125 more workers, with youth and families of color being the ones that are affected, it is evident that child welfare has been all about business and not about providing equitable, compassionate care for these groups of disadvantaged people. Dismantling barriers for our youngest and most at-risk youth has not been a high priority agenda for this county. It is crucial that it finally becomes one. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1780. 1780.
Hello, this is Flora Barron, Director of Economic Development for MAC. On behalf of MAC, I'm calling in to express our support for this initiative. In 2015, San Diego Workforce Partnership published a report that raised alarm and ignited collective action. When the region learned that 53,000 youth ages 16 to 24 were not enrolled in school and not working, it developed a strategic plan requiring cross-sector collaboration and bold thinking to reduce this number. High schools and colleges, community-based organizations, and government entities worked in tandem towards a common goal. Year after year, collective efforts bore fruit, and yet progress was not equitable. Youth disconnection rates in South County, San Diego's neighborhoods increased during this time period. By 2018, while the overall number of disconnected youths residing in the county was reduced to 41,000, a majority of the youth who continued to be out of work and out of school were Latinx and Black youth. Youth who are out of school and out of work often come from backgrounds of entrenched poverty and instability. They are more likely to have not completed high school, more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to have spent time in a mental hospital in the past 5 years, more likely to have received drug and alcohol treatment, more likely to not have health insurance during their adult lives, and only 1% of youth who have been disconnected will earn an associate's degree or higher compared to 36% of the general population. It is not only our moral imperative to bridge widening education and income gaps for youth of color, but investments in youth of color are also critically important to any economic strategy for the future development of our communities. Without targeted investments, youth of color, particularly those living and learning in South County, San Diego, will earn less income and build less wealth in their lifetimes compared to their peers. Youth workforce programs like MAC's Connect to Success program increase access to quality and affordable education, basic needs and socio-emotional supports, social capital, and ultimately better jobs offering living wages. Youth workforce programs help youth to create the stable foundations they need to achieve higher levels of education and get good paying jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3878. 3878. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. You're our last speaker on this item, so this is your opportunity to speak to the board on item 12. Last call for 3878. So Chair Fletcher, we're not getting a response from our final caller on this item.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone who called on to this item. Thank you to Supervisor Vice Chair Vargas for bringing this forward. I was pleased to join with you. Strengthening communities have been disproportionately impacted by institutional racism as and will continue to be a high priority. And I think this is a really positive step forward in our intentional approach and action to be on a path of change. I think this action, the creation of the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, the declaration of racism as a public health crisis, everything that we are doing to align will help us continue to have a focused approach to supporting at-risk boys of color and men of color as they navigate through the education system and beyond. We know, and research clearly outlines, adverse childhood experiences unless met with trauma-informed care can have devastating impacts on their development. And this initiative will explore, again, with great intentionality, to help children through adulthood, not only when it comes to school, but a more comprehensive and holistic approach. And so I really appreciate what we're doing. I appreciate the work that's happening. And I really look forward to seeing this initiative through and what comes back and the additional steps we may take. And so we have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, a second by myself to approve the recommendations in Agenda Item 12. Let me ask my colleagues if there's any comments or questions at this point. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much to both Chair Fletcher and Vice Chair Vargas for bringing this forward. I strongly support this action. You know, we're a board that does not turn its back on problems. One of the first actions we took this year was to declare that systemic racism is a public health crisis because we have the research to back it up. And today we are using that declaration to take specific action. I would like to, again, thank everyone who has shown up here to raise their voice because criminalization of people of color in our society permeates too many of our systems. I'll be proud to support this action. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask my colleagues if any of the rest of them have any Supervisor Anderson.
I'm happy to support this today. I do want to do a quick shout out to Neighborhood House. As you've heard me speak before about the poverty in my district, Neighborhood House provides a lot of food and assistance in the community that's much needed, and I'm grateful to have them there at the table with us. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. We have a motion by Vice Chair Vargas, a second by myself. Seeing no other comments, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Yes.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vice Chair Vargas, yes.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll now move to agenda item 13, increasing education and providing access to in-home supportive services. I'm pleased to bring this item forward, a proposal that will increase education and provide greater access to in-home supportive services. I want to thank the IHSS caregivers that have called and helped us bring forward this measure. I want to recognize the United Domestic Workers, the union that represents many of these workers. In-home supportive services is a program established by the state of California and run in San Diego by the public authority in partnership with our county government. The board serves as the governing body of the public authority, and IHSS workers provide critical care to our county's most vulnerable residents, low-income seniors, those with disabilities. It allows them to stay home, to retain some independence. It also keeps them out of hospitals and nursing homes. And these caregivers are lifesavers, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Not only are they providing care, they're combating social isolation many medically vulnerable individuals are currently facing. A recently released state audit on IHSS programs included review of 4 counties, including our county. And while San Diego was the only one reviewed that has made some plans for the increased aging population that will require IHSS services, more must be done to anticipate this coming exponential increase in need. The audit also recognized something that we know: these caregivers who are lifelines to so many in our community must be paid more. And we will continue to advocate for higher wages from the state government and do everything that we can as a county to support these workers. But in addition to that, we know that we need to create a robust education and communications campaign to explain the services available to potential clients. We know that we need to recruit caregivers for communities where they are needed. At times we have an imbalance between caregivers and clients, and we want to work to rectify that. And then we want to make information more accessible to the public about this program. And so we think these proposals are a step in the right direction to better support both the clients of this program and the providers, our IHSS workers who do an incredibly difficult job. And I urge your support. And with that, I will make a motion to adopt the recommendations in item 13.
I'll second the
Supervisor Vargas?
Yeah, I can second the motion. I just, Chair Fletcher, thank you for bringing this to the board. And I don't know, I think for those of you that have heard me talk about this before, this is very personal because many of you know that my dad, I'm my dad's caretaker, right? And although I'm not part of the IHSS program, the IHSS program has been instrumental in serving our family, and it absolutely serves our elderly and disabled folks in our communities. And so I do want to say that, and I've talked to a couple of folks about this, including Mr. Macchioni, and I've said, it really isn't the easiest system to navigate. And sometimes I've had challenging times, and my brother and I have done our best to try to navigate the system. But so for me, the fact that we're going to make sure that we're going to be addressing some of these barriers by making sure that people understand public awareness about what the program is, and really strategically target future recruitment campaigns, that's super powerful. Because right now, like we live in Chula Vista, and sometimes the folks that are the caretakers live in San Isidro and other areas, and it's really tough. They don't know how to, from one place to another, what to do. And so I'm really excited about the fact that IHS is going to provide an opportunity for folks in our community, to be able to get more information, to know the great work that they're doing, and more importantly, that many of the folks that are helping our community members, our most neediest, are really folks that are going to be receiving payment for the work that they would likely be doing anyway. And so whether it's a family member or a community member, this program is a win-win for IHSS recipients, and we must ensure we're maximizing the program and meeting the demand. So thank you, and I'm proud to second that motion.
Thank you. Why don't we go to our public speakers, and then we'll come back to board member discussion and deliberation. I'll ask the clerk to call forward the speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 8 requests to speak in this item. We'll be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number, and they will hear notification that their call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the audio record. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. You'll hear the sound when your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. Again, any members of the public that requested to speak on item 13, please dial into the conference line now. Erin, if you could please identify the first caller.
Thank you. Our first caller is 1627.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher. My name is Doug Moore. I'm the Executive Director of UDW, and I'm speaking today in support of the increasing education and providing access to in-home support services, or IHSS as it's known. UDW is a union for home care workers, by home care workers. More than 29,000 of our members who reside in San Diego County are currently looking after loved ones in our families or care for community members who need assistance with activities for daily living, including taking a shower, changing clothes, brushing teeth, preparing meals, traveling to medical appointments. These critical workers continue to work during these unprecedented times and are asking for as many precautions to ensure they limit exposure as they perform life-existing work in the most intimate, infection-susceptible settings, and they do it for little more than minimum wage. They are, at times, treated as a disposable workforce when they truly are invisible heroes. This pandemic has created an environment where our clients can no longer go out into public spaces to get groceries, medicine, and required health appointments, which requires our home care workers to put in much longer hours than previously assessed by IHSS. That said, despite these challenges, our home care workers continue to go to work day in and day out. We thank them for their amazing work on behalf of those who cannot support themselves without caregiving assistance. To ensure this service continues to reach all San Diegans who desperately need it, I fully support the creation of a comprehensive education and communications campaign to explain more clearly the services available to potential clients, recruit additional caregivers for communities where those services are needed, and make information more easily accessible to the public who may be eligible for this program. Again, we greatly appreciate your time and support today, and our members are thankful for you acknowledging their service to vulnerable San Diegans. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next caller is 7592. 7592.
Hello, my name is Delfina Gonzalez, and I want to tell you a quick story about why this is so important. I have a daughter who is 26 years old that has Down syndrome. I did not know about this program, the IHSS program, for the last 24 years. What happened was that the doctors had forgotten to tell me, the social workers had forgotten to tell me, and the nurses and teachers had forgotten to tell me. It happened. And what literally affected me was that I lost my job many times because I had to stay home and take care of my daughter. I was almost homeless because I could not find a way of being able to sustain my family when my daughter most needed me. When I found the IHSS program, I became a strong advocate and a very strong member at the UDW, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But in that process, as being an organizer, now a speaker at orientation, I looked up for flyers to be able to give and tell people about the orientation about IHSS. And the last updated flyers were from 1998. So over 20 years ago, literally were updated IHSS flyers. I actually was called when a woman was 87 years old, living off in her house and not wanting to live in her house and living in her car. And she was called, somebody called me because she had no family. Nobody had referred her to this program, and she still wanted to be independent. There is such a big need out there. And I appreciate Chair Fletcher for being able to support this, because this is something that we want to make sure that the doctors have those flyers, that the teachers are able to tell their students, their preschool students, the parents, if they didn't happen at the hospital or if it happens when the children are older, that there's a flyer of information available talking about a San Diego County program that can really save families and save lives. So I completely endorse and appreciate this measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3640. 3640.
Hi, my name is David Garcias. I'm the president of SEIU Local 221,
representing over 10,000 county workers. We are proud to stand with Chair Fletcher and our brothers and sisters at United Domestic Workers to lend our support to this common sense proposal to create an education program to highlight the in-home support service programs, to expand the participation of both clients and caregivers. The care provided by hardworking home care providers is even more important during the pandemic, and we are grateful for the work they do for our seniors and the disabled. We urge the board to support our hardworking caregivers and their clients by voting yes on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 0527. 0527.
Hi, my name is Satomi Rash-Ziegler, and on behalf of the 200,000 working families represented by the San Diego and Imperial Counties Labor Council, we applaud Chair Fletcher for the actions he is proposing to increase awareness and access to in-home supportive services. In-home supportive services and the workers who provide those services are vital to preserving the health and well-being of our communities. Because of the IHSS program, more seniors and disabled Californians are able to stay and be cared for in their own homes. And in this pandemic, limits their potential of being exposed to COVID-19, a disease that takes 8 out of 10 adults ages 65 and up. In-home supportive services are literally life-saving, and the workers who deliver these services are unsung heroes. And I hope we remember these workers and the sacrifices they have made and continue to make to ensure that our most vulnerable residents are cared for. We wholeheartedly support this strategic plan and proactive approach to increase education about in-home supportive services and increase the county's efforts to recruit providers in the areas where it's most needed. These are important steps in the journey towards health equity. We thank you for your time.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item, Chair Fletcher.
Thank you to everyone who called in on this item. We've got a motion by myself, a second by Vice Chair Vargas. Let me ask my colleagues if they have any comments they would like to add. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, I really want to thank Chair Fletcher for bringing this forward. This is such a vital program. I have had the opportunity to spend a day with some of our IHSS providers and get a real sense of the work that they do, serving some of the most vulnerable members of our community. And a lot of people have no idea about this program. They don't know it exists. They don't know how to access it. They don't know how to navigate it. And, I hope as we move forward that we're able to do a lot more to support our IHSS providers in the work that they do to serve our community. And I think this is a really vital first step to at least begin to invest in expanding outreach and making sure people across San Diego County know about this service and the people who are in need in our community know how to access the services that they deserve. So again, thank you so much, Chair Fletcher, for bringing this forward, but also thank you to all of our IHSS providers who work so hard every single day, who really are heroes, protecting the health and safety of our community and serving the most vulnerable. So thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Supervisor Lawson-Remer. Seeing no other comments, we have a motion and a second. We have to call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to move to agenda item 17. This will be a report and the board receiving the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Annual Report and Presentation. Agenda item 17. I want to thank Paul Parker, the new Executive Director of CLRB, for being here and for all of their work. Obviously, over the course of the last year, we repositioned them within the agency to ensure greater independence. We increased their funding, expanded their scope of what they can look into. I think it's vitally important that we have an independent citizen law enforcement review board that is empowered and is active and is engaged to ensure accountability and transparency when it comes to law enforcement functions of San Diego County. And so I appreciate the work of the staff at CLRB and all of the appointed members of CLRB who form this body. And so I want to turn it over to Paul for a presentation. I believe we have some requests for public speakers, and then I think there will probably be a fair amount of board deliberation and discussion on these items. So let's start with our presentation.
Before Mr. Parker begins, the members of the public that have requested to speak on this item, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided to you. Thank you.
Well, first off, thank you, Chair Fletcher, Vice Chair Vargas, Supervisors Anderson, Lawson, Reamer, and Desmond. This is CLRB's 30th anniversary, so I'm proud to be here on the 30th anniversary of CLRB to give you an overview of our 2020 annual report. I will thank the board. In the 30 years, over the last 6 to 8 months, is the first time we really have been given any kind of true attention and expansion of authority, and so I really appreciate the board's confidence in us as we move forward. I will quickly recap what's in the annual report about our actions last year that reassigned us from the public safety group to the finance and general government group, and I want to give a shout out to Ebony Shelton and her team who've made the transition seamless. I also want to talk about real quickly, there is a revised CLRB member nomination and selection process. It takes into account the community's involvement and working with the County Communications Office. We've been able to come up with a specific plan, media outreach plan for recruiting new applicants for our CLRB openings, which we've done now twice. We had the most recent publication yesterday, most recent media article out yesterday. We've also worked with them to come up with a general communication plan. Again, it's the first time this has ever really happened. This has ever happened for CLRB, and we really appreciate the support. Next slide, please. Part of the expansion of authority, it's huge. We at CLRB, we investigate things with a signed complaint. There are many things that we can investigate. We'll talk about those a little bit more here in the presentation. But there are now 4 things that we can investigate without a signed complaint. The one that's been in existence for CLRB's entirety has been deaths arising out of or due to the actions of peace officers. I want to make it very clear, we only have jurisdiction over the peace officers, the sworn members of the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department. So we were able to investigate deaths without a signed complaint until it went into effect December 17th of 2020. We now have 3 additional categories: discharge of firearm by sworn members of Sheriff and Probation, use of bodily force resulting in great bodily, or use of force resulting in great bodily injury, and use of force at First Amendment protected events. Again, all by sworn members and sworn members only of the Sheriff and Probation Departments. I can say that at this point, we already have 1 discharge of firearm complaint, without a complaint, I should say, the new category, and we have 2 uses of force resulting in great bodily injury. Next slide. So as part of this increased workload, there was a workload analysis that was conducted mid to late last year, and based upon that, we estimated that our current workload would go up from 150-ish to almost 200, and it included those new categories of complaints, included jail inspections, which we are permitted to do, and we're going to convene doing those post-pandemic. But because of the increased workload, we needed additional staffing. Again, this is the first time that CLRB has been provided any kind of substantial staffing. If you've been familiar with CLRB law, you know we always run up against the clock. It's always, we have 1 year to complete our investigations, and we're always up against the clock. With the 3 staff members we had, we believe that it's been difficult to complete these cases timely, but now, thanks to the board, we have a 50% increase in investigative staff, which should be hopefully on board within the next month and a half, and we've already hired and promoted a supervising special investigator that'll help me. That person will be able to run the day-to-day operations as far as investigations, while I can focus on other items that are important to CLRB and the Board of Supervisors, to include community outreach. Next slide, please. So it's just some of the numbers. We'll just break down some of the numbers, and I will say that these are the numbers that we have available. I'll talk a little bit about next year's annual report and what I'd like to see us be able to do. But for this year, you'll see we had a 23% decrease from 150 down to 116, 23% decrease in the number of cases reported to us. And that dropped off the last half of last year. So nothing at CLRB changed. Yes, staff works remotely, but nothing changed. Our complaints come in from folks in jail and folks who call us and email us. So those options are still available to call and email us. But we're curious to see what the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department's numbers are as far as their calls for service and activity, to see if it also decreased in some form or fashion, because we cannot explain why we went down 23%. I can tell you that at this point, thus far, going through 2 months of this year, we're getting back to where we were prior to 2020. Next slide, please. As far as the number of new complaints, you'll see that And this is traditional. These numbers here are traditional. Usually detention facilities get about 50%. We have the 7 detention facilities that we have jurisdiction over. They usually get about 50% of the new calls. Law enforcement services by the Sheriff's Department, normally 40 to 45. Court Services Bureau, anywhere from 1 to 3%. And Probation Department is anywhere from 8 to 10%. And then those numbers were lined up perfectly with last year. Again, we only have the jurisdiction of professional staff, not any kind of medical care or dispatchers or property clerks or anything along those lines. So things that we cannot address would be COVID-related, medical-related, and things along, like I said, things along those lines. Next. So to break down the number of allegations based on category, you'll see that misconduct itself, about 58% of our allegations are misconduct-related, which basically means procedural violations, unbecoming conduct, discourtesy, things along those lines. So almost 6 out of 10 complaints. I do want to point out discrimination, excessive force is about 14%. Death cases are about 5. We'll talk about those in more detail here in a minute. And discrimination is about 3. So I just want to break those 3 down in the next slides here. Next, please. So at this point, in 2020, we had 9 discrimination allegations. You'll see that 2/3 of those were racially based. The 2 others were sexual and gender identity based. And then 1 was other. Really, that should say unknown. The complainant didn't follow through, so we don't know what that complainant was alleging discriminatory. Next, please. Excessive force. This data, again, this is the data we have. We're going to have it better next year because right now you'll look at this and you'll say, oh, well, what's 14 other and what's 13 unspecified? The unspecified are ones where complainants didn't follow through. That's easy enough. But the other is a combination. You'll see that kicks were the highest allegation of complaint for excessive force. But you do see things on there as long, insofar as tasers and tight handcuffs and things like that. You also see carotid restraint, and the good thing is the Sheriff's Department has banned the use of the carotid restraint, so we wouldn't anticipate not seeing any allegations of carotid restraint moving forward. Next, please. And as far as misconduct that we briefly touched on earlier, most of those are procedurally misconduct, again, violating of some kind of procedure. Discourtesy is followed way far behind, and usually that's if the allegation is that a sworn member used a profane language or made an insolent gesture or something along those lines. Intimidation, you'll see, is up there with 10. Next slide, please. So as far as the number of cases that we closed 139 cases. Fully investigated 85 of them, but you'll see that procedurally closed. What is procedurally closed? That's almost, it's 3.5 out of every 10, right? Those are cases that people have filed allegations with us. They have filed cases with us, but because they didn't sign it under penalty of perjury, and because we didn't have the staffing to go pursue them afterwards to get them to sign under penalty of perjury, we have 35% of our cases walking out the door with no investigation whatsoever, even though they initially reached out to us and wanted us to investigate. Just they never followed through, and we didn't have the staffing to move forward and get them to follow through. We're hopeful with the additional staffing, you'll see a dramatic decrease in the number of cases that were procedurally closing without investigation. Next slide, please. So I want to point out, CLRBA also has the ability to look at any kind of policy or procedure from the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department. It doesn't have to be case specific. So last year we make recommendations on those policies. They're advisory only. The Sheriff and Probation Departments, they don't have to implement them. But I'm proud to say that with the recent numbers, it's almost about a 50%, probably even a little bit more. Right now there are some that are still being reviewed, but a little bit more than 50% of implementation rates, where the departments actually look at what we wrote and said, that's a good idea, let's implement it. For example, we had 12 policy recommendations last year in 2020. 5 of those have already been implemented by the Sheriff's Department. The other 6 for the Sheriff's Department are still under review, so they did not quash any of them out of hand. And we had 1 for Probation Department that's still under review. So all the ones that have been at least looked at by the Sheriff's Department have been implemented as of last year. Some of those policy recommendations, we requested that they include retaliation and sexual harassment and sex identity in their discrimination policy. They implemented that. We recommended that they reinstitute stricken language in the inmate suicide prevention practices and inmate safety program policy to include suicidal statements made to medical and family. They implemented that. They listed medical emergencies and deaths requiring inmate incident notation in their jail information management system. They implemented that. So we are boldened to see that they are listening. They are open to our suggestions. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, can you go back a second? I apologize. The 15 new death investigations. I'd like to talk about that. As anybody here in this room and on the call would know, that CLRB is thrust itself in the middle of the deaths that are occurring in custody. There have been there's data provided by the Sheriff's Department, there's data provided out there by media outlets, and so CLRB has now convened a subcommittee to do an independent analysis of these deaths that are occurring in San Diego County jail custody in comparison to other counties across the state. As far as last year's deaths, we had 15 new death investigations. That was down from 18 the year before. Out of those 15, 12 occurred in the custody of the jails. Out of those 12, one was a homicide, 2 were suicides. Turns out 4 were natural, with one of them being COVID related, which was just announced the other day, and 4 were drug related. Out of all those 4 drug related deaths, each one of those drug related deaths dealt with fentanyl, which is interesting because the year before, the drug related deaths dealt with methamphetamine, but this year all 4 drug related deaths have dealt with fentanyl. All 13 people that died in jail custody were men, 6 were white, 4 were African American, and 3 were Latino. There was a deputy-involved shooting, and that was a white male, and there was 1 person who died in law enforcement custody from a drug-related event, and that was a Latino. And then finally, there was 1 person who died after he had been released from Vista Detention Facility, but never made it out of the hospital. He went from the jail to the hospital and died, and that turns out to be, it's listed as a natural death, but CLRB's investigation reveals it may actually be a drug-related death, and that will be on our agenda next week. Outreach activities. I can honestly say that CLRB is not known for doing outreach, and especially not known, the previous executive officer did outreach to the Latinx community, but that was it. We didn't do much outreach. We haven't. And I can say that that's because of staffing or whatnot, but regardless, I don't care what it is, it's not appropriate, not acceptable. So that's going to be my focus once we get everybody up to staffing, is to be doing outreach specifically to communities of color and underrepresented populations. We'll also be going and doing outreach to all 9 contract cities in which the Sheriff's Department has a contract, and then any other groups affiliated with the Human Relations Commission, and you name it, we're already getting the word out there. Next, please. As part of trend identification, CLRB is responsible for that, and we have looked at body-worn camera usage. There was a concern that maybe body-worn camera by the Sheriff's Department was not being used as it should be. It was not being turned on. Records weren't being retained, whatnot. Out of our limited cases that we've looked at, we don't see a systemic trend that it's not being used. As a matter of fact, it's been used, and it's been used regularly, and has been, quite frankly, created. There's a lot of work in looking at all the hours and hours and hours of body-worn camera footage that we received. So I can assure you that we're getting body-worn camera footage for certain. We've already talked about the death investigations. We'll talk about trends when we have that subcommittee report, hopefully before the end of the year. It's a complex problem. We hope to take the time that's needed to do it correctly. And as far as sustained findings, everybody always says, well, CLRB is, it's just a rubber stamp for the departments, that you don't do anything, you don't have this, you're not holding anybody accountable because you're advisory only. We did have 6 cases in which we sustained 12 total allegations, which is on line with other civilian oversight entities throughout the country. And deputy sheriffs and probation officers can appeal those findings to the Civil Service Commission, and we have 3 deputies doing so right now. We hope to defend our findings in the first quarter of this year. I will say that wraps up the annual report from 2020. I will say that moving forward, we're getting more data, and I'd like to see next year's report somehow have maybe an early warning system component to it, somehow have demographics of, I've asked the department for demographics of the subject officers, the officers that are alleged to have committed these allegations. We want to know the demographics of those folks because we're now collecting the demographics of our complainants and our decedents, and we want to see if there are any trends there. So hopefully we'll be able to get that information from the departments as we move forward. We obviously will be providing a further breakdown of in-custody death data next year as we get the data this year. We look to begin our jail inspections post-pandemic. We've never done it before, but we look to do that hopefully by the end of this year. And quite frankly, we want to maximize transparency within our current statute and case law and fully implement the board's directed expansion of authority while we continue our community outreach and really provide the service for all residents of San Diego County. And that will conclude my annual report presentation.
Thank you, Paul. I want to thank you and the entire team at CLRB for all of your work and for that presentation. We certainly look forward to your continued work and all of the efforts and energy and focus that you are bringing to the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. Let me confirm with the clerk, I do not believe we have any requests for public comment on this item. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair Fletcher. There are no requests to speak on this item. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll put a motion on the table to receive the CLRB annual report. And let me go to my colleagues. I see Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair Fletcher. I'd like to second your motion. And I would also really like to thank the members of CLRB for all your hard work, and like to highlight that this report does cover the mental health challenges faced by incarcerated people and staff at our facilities. So we really must continue to look into the innovative ways to address the intersection between mental health issues and law enforcement. So again, thank you so much for the work that you've done. And I look forward to seeing how the new powers and duties of this board are going to be reflected in the new report.
Thank you. Any other colleagues? Supervisor Desmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Paul and his team for the presentation, and all the volunteers who actually serve on the as members on the CLRB board. Last year was a big transition with a lot more added scope of work, and CLRB was there to give the people a voice. And I know we have top-notch deputies, always striving to serve and to treat everyone with respect. However, life always presents challenges, and I'm glad that the CLRB is there to provide the independent oversight. So thank you very much for the presentation, Paul.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any other comments? All right, we have a motion by myself, a second by Supervisor Lawson-Remer to receive the CLRB annual report. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll now move to agenda item 21. This is simply the retirement board election. With us declaring the result of this, I believe this was polled by a member of the public. Let me ask the clerk if that person who polled it is in the queue to speak.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We do not see that individual in the conference line at this time. So the individual that requested to speak in item 21, if they could please dial into the conference line now.
Quickly dial into the conference line now would be great. I will make a motion to declare candidate Lisa Roan to be elected to fill the vacant second general member seat of the Board of Retirement for the remainder of the regular 3-year term expiring on June 30th, 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by myself, a second by Supervisor Anderson. Any board member comments on this? Let me ask the clerk to see if our caller has called in.
The caller has still not called in on this item, Chair Fletcher.
All right, thank you. We'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll move to our final agenda item in open session today, agenda item 23, amendments to the compensation ordinance. I believe we have a number of public speakers on this item. I would ask the clerk to call forward those speakers, and then we will return for board discussion.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 23 requests to speak on this item. I would ask all the individuals that requested to speak on item 23 to please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will be calling speakers by the last 4 digits of their phone number. You'll hear notification that your call has been unmuted. You will then need to press *6 to unmute your phone. Each caller will be asked to state their name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board. You will hear this sound. When your time is up, so please conclude your comments at that time. I'd remind the public speakers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. As we're waiting for the callers, it looks like we have one individual. Aaron, if you could please begin identifying the callers.
Yes, our first caller is 3927. 3927.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Fletcher and the supervisors. My name is Linda Correa. I'm a member of SEIU 221. I have worked at the county for 28 years. I work at the North Inland Livewell Center as a human services specialist, and my job functions are to make sure that our San Diego County families are receiving their benefits. I'm speaking today on behalf of my fellow coworkers, members from all departments and corners of the county. Our county cannot run without public workers. I'm asking you to please continue in supporting the Families First Coronavirus Response Act locally through COVID leave until the federal bill is passed. Continuing to support this initiative will show your support for the workers that are working hard for the communities during this crisis. The frontline workers at the Family Resource Centers, for example, handle one of the essential parts of serving our county and making sure that the families are receiving their benefits during this crisis. Frontline workers continue to work at the FRCs, Family Resource Centers, and teleworking from their homes at risk of COVID, doing their duties during this crisis to serve and should not be forgotten. They deserve to have equity, increases, and hazard pay. I'm asking you to please continue to support the Families First Coronavirus Response Act for your employees, and I'm asking you to please invest in your employees during this crisis by considering hazard pay. It's time to respect us and protect us. Thank you for your time and have a good day.
Thank you. Our next caller is 2412. 2412.
All right, hello, my name is Sarah Nielsen, and I am a librarian with the San Diego County Library and a member of SEIU 221. I am the daughter of a retired county employee, and I've spent time as a county student worker alongside our mayor, Todd Gloria, and I've worked for the county library for the last 9 years. Sorry. I've also lived and worked in Supervisor Anderson's District 2 for the majority of my life. I'm here today to speak about the sacrifices library staff have made since the pandemic started last March. My coworkers and I have consistently stepped up for the County of San Diego, and I hope the new board will now step up for us. County library branches have been open for in-person indoor library services since the beginning of September 2020, except briefly when ICU capacity was low. Patrons are welcomed into our buildings where they can stay for up to 2.5 hours at a time to browse for materials for pleasure or professional development, or use our Wi-Fi or public internet computers to apply for unemployment, jobs, and gain access to a variety of other valuable and much needed resources that they might not have the means to access anywhere else. However, during a pandemic where a virus can transmit easily indoors via aerosols, this environment has the strong potential to be dangerous for both staff and patrons, even if masks are worn properly, and far too often they are not. Libraries are information and education hubs that provide so much for their communities, and despite working directly for and with the public on a daily basis, library staff have not been prioritized for receiving the vaccine in order to safely continue to provide this access. As a recipient of the 2019 World's Best Library Teacher Award, an award created and given to me by two of my regular Storytime attendees and their caregivers, librarians and library workers are educators and should be prioritized as such in the vaccine distribution. The last 11 months have been incredibly challenging. Library staff have played a critical role in the county's pandemic response, both inside and outside of our branches. It is time that the county protects us, respects us, and pays us. Please prioritize library staff in the vaccine distribution, vote yes on hazard pay, and Families First Coronavirus Response. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 7805. 7805.
Good afternoon.
Are you there?
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairperson Fletcher and supervisors. My name is Tim Macedo, and I am a proud member of SEIU Local 221. I'm calling today to urge the board to vote yes to extend the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, as well as to vote yes for hazard pay for frontline workers. As a teleworking HSS staff person at the El Cajon Family Resource Center, my thoughts go out daily to my union and county brothers and sisters who put their health, and the health of their family in jeopardy every day to serve our communities. As a worker at from a FRC that has 3 previous COVID outbreaks, I would also ask the board to think about how many of the 260 plus thousand county COVID cases, the 3,300 deaths, and the approximately 26,000 plus COVID long haulers contracted the disease, our county employees, and contracted the disease because of their employment with the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3701. 3701.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Stacey Johnson, and I am a Human Services Specialist with the Southeast Family Resource Center and a community member of District 1. I'm here to urge you to vote yes to extend the provisions of Families First Coronavirus Response Act. The county has an obligation to ensure that workers are not forced to choose between their paychecks and the public health measures needed to combat the virus. The county needs to support workers that are working hard for the communities during this crisis. I am also here to urge you to reconsider your vote regarding hazard pay. Supervisor Anderson, you stated that county workers are better off than most because we have a retirement plan, health insurance, and job security. Your disregard to our hard work and daily sacrifice means you do not understand the quality of essential services we provide to our communities while putting our health at risk. Let me tell you a little bit about who we are. We are people who have a job, which means we pay taxes, resulting in our take-home being $1,300 biweekly or less. Some of us have school-age children who are now distance learning, resulting in our electricity and food expenses to triple. We are single parent struggling with a severely disabled child and only able to work half time because the daycare facility closed due to COVID, bringing our income down by half, meanwhile expenses rapidly increasing. We have health insurance, which means we have co-pays and out-of-pocket expenses, and at times it's a choice between going to the doctors or putting food on the table. We are employees in debt and suddenly not able to meet our basic needs, just trying to stay above water. If you can help, why would you refuse? Supervisor Anderson, you said that there are many in your district that would love to step in and do our job. We need and welcome the help. Please give us more employees. But the retention rate for my position alone is at an all-time low. What we do and what is expected of us is not as feasible as you may think. There are many employees in the office providing essential services for the homeless and needy at the expense of their physical and mental health, putting not only themselves at risk, but their families as well. What about them? Please approve hazard pay and Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And remember, everyone has their own story. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 5755. 5755.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Crystal Irving, and I'm a proud member of SEIU Local 221. I've served as a children's social worker for Child Welfare Services for over 7 years. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began nearly 1 year ago, social workers have continued to ensure the safety and well-being of children and have worked to preserve families by providing resources and hands-on guidance. We urge you to vote yes to extend the provisions of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that expired on December 31st. We also know that continuous quality services like my coworkers and I have provided comes with a cost. Many of my coworkers have contracted coronavirus and thankfully have recovered. Some have not, like my colleague and dear friend, Ms. Rhonda Felder, who's since passed away. County employees also deserve hazard pay. And not only do employees deserve hazard pay, but we deserve retroactive hazard pay to recognize the ongoing sacrifices we've made since the pandemic began. March is National Social Workers Month, and we've been on the front line, often forgotten, with no banners or commercials calling us heroes and recognizing our daily sacrifices. And truthfully, we don't need the fanfare. But hazard pay would serve as a great recognition for the caliber of work we've continued to produce in crisis mode throughout a year-long pandemic, and recognition for us putting our health and the health of our families at risk while providing this excellent public service. Every day we wake up and power through, facing another day of historic trauma, wondering if we'll be next. dealing with the loss of one or more family members' incomes and the daily losses of lives of our loved ones and those extensions of our loved ones. Yet and still, we wake up daily and power through. The county should also cover remote work costs because we shouldn't have to pay out of pocket to do our jobs efficiently and effectively. Hazard pay recognizes our hard work and sacrifice as the additional costs that we've incurred. Please respect us, protect us, and pay us, and vote yes on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2143. 2143.
Good afternoon. Hello, Chairperson Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Kia Vara. I'm a proud member of the local SEIU 221. I work at the El Cajon FRC as an HSS. We provide basic essential services to the county's most disadvantaged, such as food and medical benefits. I work in office as a frontline employee, and I'm a single mother with a 5-year-old at home. She was exposed 2 separate occasions at her daycare, which I need so that I can come into work, and had to quarantine. The first instance was before the FFCR expired, so I was covered and able to keep my daughter safe without having to worry about my time or my pay or my time off. The second exposure incident, FFCR had expired, so my time off hours were used and have been depleted. I do not make anywhere near $100,000. Mr. Anderson. So I'm unable to purchase a laptop to work from home or take the pay loss. I'm a single mother, and that's just not in my budget. In order to keep our community safe and provide essential services such as food and medical insurance, I need to be protected as well so I can do my job and protect against COVID at the same time. We all have unique situations that cannot be put in a cookie cutter. However, we are all dealing with COVID right now, and COVID leave is essential in battling this pandemic and protecting our communities. COVID isn't over, so our protection shouldn't be either. As a county employee, we're doing our best to care for the community as well as our own families. I encourage the board to become aware on what some of our duties as well as our pay while continuing to work for our community, as there appears to be some discord. San Diego's cost of living is sky high. I personally, my rent is 60% of my take-home pay. I cannot afford time off or to provide work resources to work from home. I live in Joel Anderson's district. Please reconsider how you view the county employees that are working tirelessly while being simultaneously exposed to COVID. I personally appreciate Nathan Fletcher and the other board members that do show support for county employees as we continue through this pandemic. My office has personally gone above and beyond to continue operating and protect us. However, we do need the board support to continue with these protections. Please vote yes.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 1774. 1774. Please press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah, hello, Chairperson Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Sarah Johnson. I've been a licensed vocational nurse for over 20 years. 16 plus years I've spent working at Edgemoor. I'm in full support of extending the FFCRA. I've had many coworkers that have contracted COVID and for one reason or another did not have enough leave to be off for 14 days. One of my coworkers, a single mom, received FFCRA, but it expired before her quarantine period ended. She currently is short 3 days of pay. Extending this leave would hopefully prevent this from happening again. Another issue that I would like to speak about would be the topic of hazard pay. We as county employees encourage you to vote yes on this proposal, more specifically retroactive hazard duty pay. We have been working faithfully during this pandemic. There have been nursing shortages. A lot of my coworkers and I have worked beyond our 8-hour shifts in order to care for our residents and help out our fellow employees. We may have vacation time that we need to use, but we can't due to being short-staffed. Let me tell you, the workplace has been really scary. When one is at work and covered head to toe in PPE, no one recognizes you. At Edgemoor, staff put photos of themselves with a clip on their uniform so they can be recognized. Social distancing is impossible with patients as they all need a lot of help. Some patients refuse to wear masks or the COVID vaccine. The PPE that is worn does not help the staff feel any safer. It often destroys the skin or causes bruises. Some nurses have reactions to the mask and end up with fluid-filled blisters or pressure areas on the bridge of their noses. At times, noses will bleed due to this irritation or all of the COVID testing we have had to do. Personally, I've had an open area to my nose and had increased pain while wearing the masks or respirators. The increased workload, use of various PPE, and the fact that you have to almost yell to communicate with the PPE in place is exhausting. Please consider extending the FFCRA and hazard duty pay. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6687. 6687.
Good afternoon, Chair, Supervisor Fletcher, and Supervisors. My name is Priscilla Willis, and I am the County of San Diego Union Employees Chapter President, and I'm here to urge you to vote yes to extending the provisions of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, a federal law that expired on December 31st, 2020. Due to COVID, we have had several outbreaks at county facilities, and a lot of county employees have had to take off time due to COVID without either getting paid because they didn't have time on the books, or they couldn't telework from home. I would like to first address Supervisor Anderson and the inaccurate statement made during the Board of Supervisors meeting on February 16 regarding county employees and their earnings. County workers do not all get paid $100,000. I promise you that. Everyone calling in makes less than $100,000. Our income is public information, but what the public don't see is what we really take home after insurance, taxes, and health care is taken out. When COVID hit and we were all sent home, it became a difficult time for everyone. Employees' utility costs increased. Employees were told they could work from home unless they couldn't work from home unless they bought laptops and got internet service. With that being said, just think about the San Diego County's backbone, our clerical staff, the office assistants. They have it worse. They make the beginning pay us $33,000, and having to risk their families and home life to keep this county, and they have to risk their home life to keep this county running. Some are living in their cars on the County of San Diego state parking locations. One of my co-workers, an office assistant, just retired after 32 years and still could not reach $20 an hour to this date. Has the pay will provide support and relief for working families and ensure the well-being and success of our communities. It is important that the county takes this matter seriously and invest in its workers during this crisis. It is time to respect us, protect us, and pay us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3640. 3640.
Good afternoon. My name is David Garcias. I'm the proud president of SEIU Local 221, representing over 11,000 county workers. I want to echo the comments of some of our members that have spoken out today to thank Supervisor Lawson-Remer and Supervisor Anderson for moving this item forward. Coronavirus leave has been a critical bridge to relieve the stress and anxiety of those that have been impacted by COVID-19, either directly or indirectly, because their family members are exposed or vulnerable. I also want to highlight that while today's vote is important, we will be calling upon this board to extend this leave further and retroactively when the National Rescue Fund money is reallocated. We've said many times that words of appreciation for county employees means little without action. Previous boards have taken their employees for granted and made insensitive comments to their employees. We thank you for taking action today, and we thank you in advance for final approval of hazard pay in the coming weeks. It's time to respect us, protect us, and pay us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 6407. 6407.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Kern, and I have worked with the San Diego County Library since 2017. I'm a member of SEIU 221 and a lifetime resident of District 2. I'm here to correct statements that Supervisor Anderson made during a previous Board of Supervisors meeting that county employees make $100,000 per year. more than his constituents, and this was his reason for being unwilling to vote for hazard pay for county workers. In my department, the county library, a handful of top-level employees make $100K per year. Most of us are not that lucky. The staff who deserve hazard pay are the staff who are on the ground in our libraries, providing assistance to our customers and ensuring that our branches run smoothly. The employees in our library system who do make $100K or more rarely provide public services. Most of the library employees who are in our branches right now are library technicians who are primarily responsible for branch operations and are the staff our customers are most likely to see when they visit a branch. The greatest numbers of our technicians are Technician 1s, whose salaries are capped at $37,000 for a full-time position. Most of these positions, however, are not full-time. Librarians make more, but the vast majority do not make $100K per year. As a half-time librarian 1, my salary starts off at $28,000 annually and is capped at about $35,000. This information is easily accessible on the website Transparent California and the county's own job descriptions and salaries page. Most employees of the San Diego County Library make little money, certainly less than $100K, in a very high cost of living area in jobs that require contact with the public during this pandemic. It has only been recently confirmed for us that library employees fall within Tier C for vaccinations, and we do not know when that tier will be able to start receiving the vaccine. That is why we have asked and will continue to ask for hazard pay, including retroactively, so that we can be compensated appropriately in this time of increased danger at our workplaces. We know how important libraries are to our communities, and we want to be able to provide library services safely and with fair compensation during this time. Finally, Supervisor Anderson, you stated it is unfair to your constituents for you to vote for hazard pay for county employees because we make so much. Supervisor, library employees are your constituents too, and that is why we are asking for your support for the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and to reconsider hazard pay for county workers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 3849. 3849.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Leslie Massland, County Librarian and SEIU 221 member for the last 7 years. Shame on you, Supervisor Anderson, for saying county workers calling for hazard pay make over $100,000. Many classifications make less than $15 minimum wage. Library staff have been running COVID hotels, Great Plates, and COVID testing sites for the past 11 months, working in mentally, physically, and emotionally punishing work sites in direct danger of COVID-19 by being disaster workers. And that's not even mentioning staff at Polinsky, Edgemore, Rosecrans, and FRCs all around the county. Services essential to keeping working families in San Diego connected to health and protective services. Saying we don't deserve hazard pay and vaccinations after the board voted itself a raise in October 2019, the board that makes $200,000K each already, is not only embarrassingly out of touch, but disgustingly callous. This hazard pay and vaccinations recognizes the sacrifices we make to serve our communities. The county can't run without public workers or the services that we provide. We urge you to vote yes to extend FFCRA that expired December 31st and to allow employees to vaccinate in Tier 1B or 1C. Libraries are places of learning. We teach the foundations of early literacy to new parents, ESL and citizenship to newcomers and the underserved. We serve COVID response and continue to open our branches for library services. We deserve vaccinations to protect ourselves, but also the vulnerable populations like the elderly and homeless that visit us every day. We are your constituents, working families in the community, and we deserve respect for the work that we do. Protect us with vaccinations and the recognition of hazard pay. Vote yes to extend FFCRA and protect your employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is 2342. 2342.
Good afternoon, Chair Fletcher and Supervisors. My name is Nathan Woolman, and I'm a member of SEIU Local 221. I have worked for the county for 14 years. I work at eligibility operations where I keep the public safe by ensuring correct and timely payments of social service programs. I believe it is imperative that the county invest in its workers throughout the pandemic to ensure the capacity for quality services for years to come. Unfortunately, I feel that in its early stages, we were slow to do so, at least in some individual departments. I understand that the pandemic was a difficult time for everyone. But in my non-public facing department, I had to represent several of my coworkers as a union steward as they were experiencing the consequences of some early ambivalence or lack of clarity in response to the pandemic. This came in the form of issues with being able to use leave time for those who are unable to work, telecommuting issues for those who needed support, and the new employees who felt they were not being supported in their training and felt forced to physically come into the office. I think that this change is a correction and the least we can do for our employees to provide proper leave time to allow for a healthy and safe return for workers when they're able to do so, and appropriate hazard pay for those who had no other option but to risk their health and safety by physically coming into work each day. That's why I support the change to the compensation ordinance, and I thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public testimony on this item, Chair Fletcher.
Thank you to all of those who called in on this item. We have a motion to adopt item 23. Let me ask if there's a second, and if any of my colleagues have any comments they would like to make. Let me go first to Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, I'd like to second the motion. And, I just want to acknowledge all the hard work of our county employees in this difficult time. And thank you for everything that you do and for being on the front lines and for serving our community day in, day out. And that was true long before COVID and will continue to be true long after COVID. And, cannot thank you enough for your service and your sacrifice and what you've done, and particularly putting yourself at risk and in harm's way at this moment of crisis and during this pandemic. So thank you again for all that you have done and will continue to do.
Thank you. Any other board members have comments on this item? All right.
I just wanted to say thank you. Sorry, Chair Fletcher. I just want to say thank you to our county employees for all their work and dedication, and for all of those that took some time to share their thoughts. I'm happy to support this item, but more importantly, anything that we can do to ensure that our employees are safe and healthy, happy to do that.
All right, we have a motion by myself, a second by Supervisor Lawson-Remer on agenda item 23. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
The motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
That concludes our regular agenda item. I do believe we have 2 requests for public comment on closed session items. Let me ask the clerk if we could call forward those speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 2 requests to speak, as you indicated. One of the individuals has called in. We'll go ahead and identify that caller, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board on closed session matters.
Yes, if caller 8046, you may proceed.
Good morning, supervisors. This is Noah Harris with Climate Action Campaign on to comment on item J of the closed session. We are disappointed that Senate, we are disappointed that Senate Bill 743 was removed from the docket for tomorrow. We understand that this is a complex issue, especially so early in the new board's tenure, but we urge you to settle this matter in closed session today. The climate crisis can't wait any longer. We know what we need: sustainable communities with an ample supply of affordable housing near jobs and transit, not far-flung sprawl developments in dangerous wildfire zones. Transportation emissions account for almost half of unincorporated county greenhouse gas emissions, and as such, reducing vehicle miles traveled is one of the most important challenges to mitigating the impact of climate change. SB 743, passed in 2013, is a key tool for encouraging infill and for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we urge you to implement it in a way that is consistent with the board's climate goals and with state climate law. Thank you.
Thank you. And our other caller has not called in at this time, Chair Fletcher.
All right, thank you. We will conclude our business before the board. We'll now proceed with adjournments in memory. We have 4 requests for adjournment in memory today. First up will be Supervisor Anderson for an adjournment in memory of Ann Dumanis. Supervisor Anderson.
Sorry for the delay. Thank you very much. I'm saddened to report that Ann Dumanis, the mother of our former district attorney, Bonnie Dumanis, died peacefully in her home on February 12th, surrounded by Bonnie, her daughter-in-law, Denise Nielsen, and her extended family member, Judy Copeland. Ann Dumanis was 90. Ann was born in Bronx, New York, and lived most of her life in Brockington, Massachusetts, where she and her husband of 57 years, Abe, raised their 2 daughters. Ann and Abe later moved to San Diego in 1993 to be close to Bonnie. Abe passed away in 2008. Ann was a skilled knitter, knitting instructor, and a member of the San Diego North Coast Knitters Guild. She met weekly with knitting friends in what became known as Queen Anne's Court. That's how I got to know Anne, and her feisty nature, and most importantly, her warm ability to make friends. Her good nature allowed her to strike up friendships even with complete strangers in grocery lines or in the next seat on a plane. The greatest tragedy of her life was the death of her youngest daughter, Donna, at age 18. And her greatest joy was seeing Bonnie's success as an attorney, a judge, and later a district attorney. Anne is survived by Bonnie, her favorite daughter-in-law, Denise, and her adopted daughter, Judy. She's also dearly missed by her loved relatives and many knitting buddies who all remembered her talent and all the fun times they shared together. Thank you for allowing me to read this. Anne will be missed.
Thank you, Supervisor Anderson. Our next adjournment in memory is Vice Chair Nora Vargas, who adjourned in memory for Rhonda Feldy.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. In honor of Black History Month, I wanted to ask us to adjourn this meeting in honor of one of our own county employees affected by COVID, Rhonda Felder. Rhonda gave her life to people in need and worked for the last 5 years as a social worker for the county of San Diego. She passed away towards the end of last year from COVID complications. She leaves behind her daughters, Treasure and Comedy, the dozen of foster children she helped raise, her family, a New Creation Church, and the numerous children she watched over as a social worker. After the pandemic began almost a year ago, she would visit with children she looked over and checked in with them virtually, and continued that work when the county allowed in-person visits again. Rhonda Feller wasn't just a social worker, she was an essential worker who gave her heart and soul to help the children. She leaves behind a legacy of love for others and a life's mission of helping and housing as many children without homes as possible. She answered anyone's call for help or a need. She checked in with children, she checked in with family, and she checked in on her strong friends. I want to adjourn this meeting in her honor and thank her family for listening today, and to continue, I want to continue to keep her daughters and her friends and family at the county in our hearts during this difficult time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The final 2 adjournments of memory are mine, and I would like to adjourn today's meeting in memory of Dr. Willie Blair. Dr. Willie Blair was a champion of the civil rights movement and a tireless advocate, not only for the Black community, but our veteran communities in San Diego. He was a Vietnam naval combat officer who spent 2 terms working for the office of mayor, along with more than 2 decades working for the United States Congress. Dr. Blair devoted his life to blazing a path of prosperity and advocacy for communities of color, with decades of work at the Black American Political Association of California here in San Diego, and eventually becoming the state president of APAC in 2017. One of his focuses was maintaining and strengthening the relationships between the Black and Latino communities with a vision of unity, solidarity, and connections to try and uplift marginalized communities. Dr. Blair was a friend and a mentor for so many who he inspired to join him in the fight for social justice. He brought a countless amount of new voices with him into the political process and community activities. His legacy will live on. In what was a difficult week for so many in our community, we had a second very impactful loss. And so I would also like to adjourn today's meeting in memory of Larry Baza. Last week would have been his 77th birthday. Larry's unwavering commitment to advocacy went back decades, often marked by history-making milestones. Larry was a fierce advocate of the LGBTQ+ community, an ardent supporter of the arts, the Latino community, and social justice. His work paved the way for a more equitable and accepting world. As a young student, Larry's summer job was working at the concession stand in Balboa Park and at the Starlight Bowl, where he helped develop a lifelong love of the arts. Larry would eventually serve as chair of San Diego's Commission for Arts and Culture and be appointed to the California Arts Council in 2016 by then Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins. In the late 1980s, Chris Kehoe recruited Larry to join a committee with San Diego Pride, eventually becoming the co-chair in 1992 with Vertez Burks, a pairing that made history as the first time San Diego Pride was led by two people of color. Larry served on countless panels, boards, and commissions, including the National Endowment for the Arts, the California Association for Local Arts Organizations, the Chicano Federation of San Diego County, the National Association of Latino Arts and Culture, the San Diego Community Foundation, and the Diversity Theater. Larry truly shaped our community, and for those of us that had the great fortune of knowing him, was just a constant source of joy and a pleasure to be around every time you would see him. He was warm, funny, beloved by so many who will deeply miss him, including myself. Our hearts are with his husband, Tom, and we send our deepest condolences to the family of Larry Baza, but we're incredibly grateful for the impactful life that he lived. I believe Vice Chair Vargas has some additional comments as well.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. When I asked to join you in adjourning also in memory of Larry Baza, I had no, this is before also Willie passed away. And Willie Blair actually was one of the first people that I ever worked with back in 1992 in a congressional office. And I've had a hard time even putting into words how I feel about his passing because of what he did for people, young people like me at the time, who really didn't know much about the political system. And I remember him teaching me everything about the Democratic Party, everything about how to do community work and community engagement, and more importantly, about the power of us working together as Latino and African Americans in our community. And it was so powerful to learn firsthand from him. And it's the same way that Larry Baza was. I also met him in my tenure working for the congressman and having done all that work on the ground. And this is a terrible, terrible loss for our communities. Both of them were amazing, amazing men. And I had no idea that I was going to get this emotional talking about both of them. But I would not be here today if it wasn't for both men and their trailblazing and the work that they did. And I didn't know that I was going to break down on camera, but I have to say that I am very lucky that in my journey, I met these two amazing men who changed my life because of their mentorship and the work that they did on behalf of our communities. And so we have lost two great leaders and men who really believed in the power of community. And so thank you, Chair Fletcher, for allowing me the opportunity to adjourn this meeting with you in their memory, because my heart is broken, but I keep their wisdom and their love for community in my heart, and I will continue to do the work that I do in their honor. So thank you for allowing me to be part of ending the meeting on their behalf.
Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. That concludes our business before us for today. We will continue our meeting into closed session, and we'll see you all back tomorrow morning.
The board will now recess into closed session to consider those matters listed under item 26 on today's agenda. If there are any reportable actions, they will be reported out prior to the start of the planning and land use session of this meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021.